weiß Bescheid. Entiendo.
Welcome to the most forward-thinking, inspirational podcast on the planet. Prepare to reevaluate everything you've been taught.
They can tell us we're crazy, and we can say, well, you haven't seen anything yet. Everything you knew was a goddamn lie. Would you up and explode like it's the 4th of July? Possessed by perfection in this land, if you're awake, you're the enemy. Where they lead, you will follow. Well, I guess that's just the way it goes. And if you look away, you'll be doing what they say. And if you look alive, you'll be singled out and tried. Every day a new deception. Pick the scene and take direction. And on a search to connect. But I don't wear a mask and I have no regret. Down on your knees, you don't look so tall. Open your eyes and the empire falls.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Mental Mastery Alliance podcast. Today I have with us a pretty fun guest, fellow that I met on the Instagram. He was posting some crazy shit and I loved it. So every now and again you sort of catch on to somebody who's doing something that goes against the grain when, you know, the grain itself is kind of screwed up. The insanity seems normal. And the insanity in this case is Will Spencer from the Renaissance of Man, a podcast, a lifestyle, an Instagram page, basically a collection of ideas and thoughts and inspiration for men and anyone looking to sort of step themselves up just a little bit more. Do you find, first off, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Awesome. Do you find, have you been getting flack, especially in sort of the cancel culture / Me Too movement era? Have you been getting flack about having either men in the title or Renaissance or promoting that sort of thing? Because I know a lot of the times it seems like, especially since 2017, men have been under attack.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, it's been much longer than that. Part of the thing, 2017 is when it became really obvious that men were under attack. Mm-hmm. But it's been a multi-generational thing, like our fathers, our grandfathers. It goes back that far if we start looking into it. But have I personally gotten flack? Sometimes I did get Twitter swarmed by a bunch of liberals on Twitter. That was fun. But for the most part, what I find is when you talk about men in a way that encourages them, it's very difficult to attack. It's only when you start crossing red lines, like you're not allowed to say anything negative about feminism or women or anything like that. It's when you cross those red lines, that's when people start to get really upset, which generally I don't do. I will do it on Twitter though, less so on Instagram.
Well, the interesting thing about Twitter is you can say whatever you want, and the Twitterverse will either attack or not attack.
Right.
And the interesting, like, I mean, I'm blown away by that because I personally have been shut down from Twitter. They took me off Twitter, and I wasn't. Well, I shouldn't say I wasn't geez, my brain just went to mush. It's not that I wasn't controversial. Okay. It's that it was like one thing led to another, that led to this being shut down, and I had to learn to speak in obviously a less aggressive tone. And that was one of those things where it's like, especially when you're sort of in the throes of your own mind, when you're a male, I speak as a male. So when you are a male living firmly in the third dimension, you there's the victimhood mentality, and it exists in a lot of us. Like, why is this happening to me? Why, why can't I, blah, 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 blah. And then you realize that things are happening in a sense where you're aggressive in your tonality. You feel certain things. And I know for me, I sort of changed all that, and I was like, wow, things are a little bit different. Like, why am I constantly being attacked for having these opinions? I would say to myself. And now there's a funny meme. It's Picard from Star Trek: The Next Generation. And he's got he's like just got this ghastly look on his face. And it's like going back and reading stuff that you posted, 4 or 5 years ago, and sort of your mentality towards things back then.
I think I saw that one.
Yeah. And it always makes me laugh because I'm like, it was me. It was me all along. And that realization is absolutely astounding. Sort of when you hit that and you're like, fuck, there's nobody to point the finger at. And there's, anyone that wanted to attack me, they had the right to attack me. And I've found that when you step into your purpose and your alignment, when you're regulated properly, there's no need for that. You're in a sense of you're operating out of integrity.
Yes.
And that changes everything. So when you operate out of integrity, I found that no one's going to attack you. And if they do, you've got a defense for it. And you realize that anyone that does attack you is really only spewing out their thing, their issue, their drama. But for you, I got to ask, with everything that you're doing and sort of with the way that you're growing and how you're attacking the world, what was your benchmark? What was your aha moment? What was your waking up moment? Your stepping into purpose moment? Do you have one in mind?
I do, yeah. And I just want to echo everything that you said, that when you as a man are speaking in integrity, when you're speaking from a position of actually sharing your own thoughts instead of attacking other people's thoughts, it's a very different posture, and it invites a lot less attack. And so there really is something to. It's as much about what you say as how you say it. And there's a great quote that someone told me. It's like, people might not remember what you said, but they'll remember how you made them feel when you said it. And there's so much truth to that in social media. Like, how are you actually trying to make people feel? My personal aha moment was in summer of 2020. I've been traveling overseas for a while, and I came home, and the world obviously shut down. And I found my way into online men's communities. One, Alexander Cortez is like a fitness guru kind of guy. And I was in his Telegram chat, maybe like 300 guys in there. And I was sharing some of my thoughts and opinions, and I found that people actually valued what I had to say. Okay. So I wrote this blog post on my travel blog called To Lose the World and Gain My Soul, which was, I'm not going to be intimidated into using my social media in the way everyone says I have to. I'm not going to post a black square. I'm not going to be bullied by this messaging and these ideas. Like, these are my platforms, and I get to do what I want with them. So I wrote, a blog post about that, and that blog post went super viral. Right. And I was like, oh wow, okay, people actually care what I have to say, me as a man, and that my unique story and my unique perspective has value. And so I had been planning to be a psychotherapist. I wanted to work with men. But then I realized, why would I spend 5 years in school to set up an office here in Phoenix when I can start being a coach and start creating content and working with men directly now? So that was like the aha moment when I was like, oh, I've got something to contribute to the conversation.
It's funny when interviewing potential clients, you have this the question that sometimes comes up. And this is something that, for anyone listening to, if you decide you want to be a coach and you want to start speaking, there's a massive difference between coaching and therapy. Yes. Coaching is results driven. Therapy is see you next week driven. And the problem is, when you are interviewing as a coach for clients, they'll say, do you have any credentials? Do you have, any of this sort of thing? And it's one of those things where, imposter syndrome might kick into somebody who never went to school for it. And one thing that I found with what I teach the people that I work with and what I say just in general is that I was not trained by the very system I speak against. And to me, that's what therapy is. And if I had the plaque and if I had this, that, and the other thing, I would be teaching you from a position of what they taught me. I would have had to have lived up to their standards to get the plaque to teach you all the same shit. And that's not going to fly anymore. That doesn't fly in today's day and age. I don't think, simply because what I have to teach is not something that I could have ever learned inside an indoctrination camp, a school.
Right.
And that's huge and that's important. So just like you said, you put that post up, and if somebody's out there and they've got something to, they've got something to say and they want to, read it, say it, do it, be it, they should. And if I've always said this as well, for every single person that's got an inkling to speak, for everyone that has the desire to say something, there's 100,000 people that want to listen, because there aren't many people that want to speak.
That's true.
The funny thing too is with regards to, like the liberal left and all that sort of stuff, and not to be political about this, because I hate the whole political stance on it.
Right.
But there are a collective of people who are, let's say, anti-bullying, for example. That is their message, and they're willing to bully you into it.
Isn't it amazing?
And it's one of those things that can't be caught. There's groups of people who are down with men and down with this and down with that. And when I see this, I think to myself, you're perpetuating the very same thing that you're trying to speak against in this arena, and it's lost on so many people. What have you come across, since you started doing this, and what changes have you found in yourself, coming from a position where, you realize that you didn't have to go to school and that you could just start speaking and that people would just start listening? How do you feel that that's changed your life?
Well, I can say that I've actually found in myself, like how it is that I like to coach. And I hear a lot. I actually was having a conversation about therapy with a man last night, actually on my podcast. So it seems to be in the air, and there have been posts going around.
Yeah.
And I think what isn't well understood about therapy, because there are so few good therapists, is that therapy, it appears very much to be see you next week. And then there are a lot of therapists for whom, they treat it as just an income source, and they're not actually trying to make you any better. But there are good therapists out there that are like, no, I want to get you to a point where you don't have to talk to me anymore.
Yeah.
The therapists that do that work primarily with people's beliefs about themselves, like what they believe that they're capable of, who they think they are, what they think they can accomplish in life. And what I've discovered about myself in my coaching is I work 50-50 with beliefs and habits. So a coach works with habits and productivity, and outward measurable goals. Mm-hmm. A therapist works with your inner reality and inner beliefs. And I do a bit of both, because your beliefs about yourself will drive your habits. And then if you change your habits, you can see that you can change, and your beliefs about yourself will change. So you can go back and forth between those two. It's kind of like a virtuous cycle. Mm-hmm. So in my coaching, what I do is, because I do have this background of working with my own inner reality and other people's, that I can help these men identify what their beliefs about themselves are, and say, do you see that belief? Like, I'll give you an example. So I had a client who, he was disappointed with where he was at in his career, and he didn't think that he would ever amount to anything. And a lot of this always goes back to our fathers and mothers. And he was telling me about an experience he had where he was, his dad was they were lifting weights in the garage, and my client, we'll call him Jim. That's not his real name. His dad.
It'd be funny if it was, though.
Yeah, right.
Damn
it. Damn it. I'm gonna get a phone call. So his dad appeared to push him. Jim was like a young teenager, and his dad appeared to push him further than he could have gone, and kind of bullied him into it. And that led to Jim getting injured, and Jim not being able to do all the things that he wanted to do. Mm-hmm. And I went back into that moment with him, and I said, what was going on there? It's like, oh, well, my dad was always hyper competitive with me. Like, wait, what? Like, your own father was competitive with you? Like your father, an adult male, was being competitive with you and potentially may have even sabotaged you. And so you grew up thinking that, if you made it anywhere in life that you would be sabotaged. And he's like, oh, that was a big thing for him to recognize that his dad had taught him something about himself. And so by shifting that belief that what your dad taught you in the moment was a lie, we were able to work on so many of his habits, and his self-belief changed. And then everything kind of spiraled from there. So it's kind of back and forth, right? Now, good therapists will take years to get there because they have a rule that they can't really tell you what they're thinking. They have to lead you to it. And me as a coach, I'm like, no, I need to help this dude fix his life. You see that? That's crap.
Yeah.
And now we're going to do something about it. So that's how it's changed me, is to be able to put those two halves of myself together.
And interestingly enough, do you find, and this is what I found sort of as I was coaching. I mean, I came from sales coaching into life coaching, and I've always hated the term life coach.
Right.
I also don't care much for the industry. I don't like the idea of somebody telling you these are the things that you need to do to make yourself happy. Anything that's cookie cutter to me is bullshit. I don't like the marketing behind it. I don't like the industry. I don't like the people, all of the gurus and all of these people with all of these things that they can do to fix. I don't like any of that shit.
Yeah.
And it's funny because, that's supposed to be my wheelhouse. That's supposed to be, where I sit when it comes to this. The idea of me selling myself to make money drives me insane as well.
Right.
It's what's done, but marketing and all this sort of stuff, all those cliches, all that gimmick and all that bullshit to me just drives me insane.
Yeah.
So you see all these guys and you see all these marketing, you see all this stuff out there, like do this, do that, do this, do that. And the whole purpose that I found with coaching and with people and with all that sort of stuff is two things have taken place. I've had the opportunity to, over the past, I guess I've been doing it now, the life coaching side of things, and I've gotten away from the sales coaching, which I've now reintegrated. So I do have the ability to help people with that.
Mm-hmm.
And that was me not denying strengths, right? So allowing all things to be. And that was a cool thing too. So I've found that being able to do this sort of stuff and being able to help and work with people has been profound for who I'm becoming. And when that happens, you get to help a different not a different caliber of person, but you get to help on a different level. You get to get right inside. And there is this thing like you talked about where the therapist tries to lead you there. You hit something on the head where you've probably got one of the same, you definitely have a gift of discernment, and you can see right through the bullshit.
Yeah.
So you don't know what it is, but when somebody says my dad was in competition with me, it's like, well, fuck, well, here's why this is that, now that you've got this out there. But the gift of discernment is something that not a lot of people understand. And it's one of those things where it's like, how can you tell me about me? You don't even know who I am. I'm like, well, it's one of those, I only need to talk to you for about 5 or 10 minutes to be like, this is what's going on.
Yeah.
And so when you hammer that down, it's absolutely beautiful. One thing, and one of the main differences between you and I is our backgrounds and our mentalities. Although they're very similar and they preach a similar message, there is an opportunity for you and I to create conflict in and within ourselves simply because you come from a religious background and I come from a new age background, quote unquote, new age. And why I like this, I think this is what we were talking about too in the thread a couple months back. Well, been about a month ago. Was that if you say you're new age, it's detrimental. Again, it's a label. Religion, new age, all labels. The mentality behind it is fascinating to me. For somebody to be so accepting, like a religion to be so accepting, the war that comes from it is the spin that man puts on it. So one of my favorite quotes of all time is, to find the God that created this, we have to first forget the God that man created. To find the God that created man, man must first forget the God that man created. To find the God that created man. Trying to get that right.
Yeah, you got it.
To find the God that created man, man must first forget the God that man created. Because we do tell ourselves a story. Whether we sit here, you and me, two human beings having a conversation, new age is a lie, religion is a lie, science is a lie. I mean, you can tell that. Science, trust the science, the whole COVID thing. Your religious background, how do you intertwine that, or do you have any sort of spirituality, or what's your take on that? Because I am curious to know, in your perception, where are we going? Where does it all, where are we coming from? Where are we going? What's the religious version of what's happening right now?
Well, I actually spent 20 years in the New Age. So, and that includes, going to Burning Man 3 times, ayahuasca, visiting all the various New Age sites around the world, like Sedona and Goa and Bali and Byron Bay and stuff like that. That was my life for a very long time. And I came to Christ in 2020. That was as a result of 20 years of searching, of exploring different religious and spiritual traditions in this giant. I mean, the New Age is just a big label for a lot of different ideas kind of mashed together, and there's no consistent thread through all of it. It's kind of like you put all these ideas on a big buffet and you take the ones off the trays that work for you, and that is your particular religion, personal religion. That's what the New Age is. So no two people have the same belief system for the most part.
I agree with that.
Yeah. And so, and that's one of the things that makes the New Age very appealing, is that you can kind of build your own personal spirituality around the way that you're constructed. But what makes it less appealing is to realize that really ultimately everyone in the New Age is very isolated, because no two people share the same beliefs. Like maybe you're into crystal, I'm not saying you, but someone's into crystals. Oh, I'm not really into crystals. I'm more into the Enneagram. Another person's into astrology. And it's like, well, we're all in this room together, but we don't really have a whole lot in common. And so It can be very isolating in that way. So where do I think this is all going? Well, we talked. It
was a loaded question for sure. Yeah.
No, that's fine. I can answer. I can absolutely unload the question and answer it. I think we'd agree that we started out the conversation talking about the assault on masculinity. So that leads to the question: what does it actually mean to be a masculine man? Which leads to the question: what does it mean to be a feminine woman? And what do we have inside ourselves that tells us what those things are? And that's what we're trying to get back to. And when we really inside ourselves as men begin digging down into what it means to be a man, where I ultimately arrived is to recognize there is actually a religion that talks about it really clearly, what it means to be a masculine man, and that religion is Christianity. And when you really start exploring what the Bible has to say, about masculinity and femininity as well, but about masculinity, you find that this is actually a pretty firm foundation to root everything that I think and know and feel about what it means to be a man. And I haven't found that, me personally now, I haven't found that in any other religion. You go looking through Hinduism. Hinduism says the self doesn't exist. Buddhism says the same. Indigenous religions, very similar. But to actually look at Christianity, it says, no, men and women are made in specific images, in the image of God. And when you say, if I want to be a masculine man, what spirituality can I adopt that reflects that masculinity? Christianity is the answer. So I think that's where we're going, is ultimately men who are looking for what it means to be a man will find their way to a faith that reflects that back to them, and they'll root themselves in it. And then they'll find all kinds of very wonderful things that go along with it.
I love that answer. And I love the open conversation. I came to New Age through Christianity, and I had to walk away from Christianity.
Yeah.
So that's as you were talking, I'm like, this is all flooding back. This is the meat and potatoes of why you're here right now.
Yeah. Awesome.
And that's, that to me was interesting. And I never wanted to take away from anyone's religious belief, because like you said, in the New Age, everybody's got this, that, and the other thing. And you're into crystals and you're into woo-woo juju and all that sort of stuff. For me, when I say New Age, I don't even like the term New Age, because but I don't want to say I've morphed beyond it, because that's just arrogant as well. I don't like labels, but I use them in my speech.
Right. You have to.
I don't like, I don't like all of these things. And in my reality, so as my crow flies, I want to say I see sort of above and beyond it. Therefore, when you say God or man and woman were created in a certain image, I see things like we live on a prison planet.
Both things can be equally true.
Yes. Yeah. And I think to myself, when men and women can be created, like if you're sent to a prison, there's no reason, like this is the jumpsuit that they gave us to live down here.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Yeah. And that, that's kind of a thing. And I think that, there are so many possibilities. And I think my biggest problem with New Age is that they're firm in their wishy-washiness, and which is an awkward statement.
You're very right.
Yeah. And my problem with Christianity was there was too many limitations. So I also hunted down, I mean, I went through all the religions. My problem with Catholicism, sorry if this is going to offend some people, but it's way too close to Satanism for me.
That's probably going to offend some people.
Yeah, probably. But but it is. I mean, they don't let you read the Bible. They read it to you. They don't let you do this. They don't let you, like a lot of the Catholic, the Catholic, especially the Orthodox Catholic. And I've got some Orthodox Catholic friends, like, and it's fucked up. The stuff that's in there. And then Christianity is the same. And then you got Islam, which is one of those things where it's totally different. And then you've got the media, which is another religion. And they tell you that we're supposed to fight this and we're supposed to fight that. At the end of the day, every last religion, quote unquote, bows to a god. And who that god is up for debate. Another problem I had too with Christianity was the idea of God and Satan. Because the idea that God exists implies that Satan exists. And also they tell a lot of stories about Satan. Satan is fear and God is love and light. And I feel that we need both of those in this world to gauge a sort of right and a wrong. And that's where my problem with Christianity came from. It was too rigid. So now I say this, I say the New Agers are weird. And I would most closely identify with a New Ager. But they're weird, and they're aggressive. Most religions that I've come across are weird, and aggressive and almost brainwashy. But it's neat because it's all of this chaos. It's all of these things that we need to experience to help us get to the next level. So wherein you and I right now are having this conversation, there's probably somebody listening to this show. Could be this year. It could be in the year 2050, assuming I've paid my hosting bill. And
long tail show. Yeah,
exactly. But they could be listening to it and go, these two idiots are talking about some dumb bullshit when it's really this and this and this, right? But that's what I love about this. The world that we live in is completely fluid. You said no two New Agers are having the same experience. No two entities on this planet are having the same experience. We all
no two have the same religion. No two have the same version of the New Age religion is what I meant. Yeah. But yeah, that's also true.
Yeah, that's kind of, I don't know how I said it. Oh, anyway.
They're having
that's what I was getting at.
Yeah.
And that's the experience here. No two people are having the exact, we're all in the same sandbox, but none of us are having the exact same experience, which is how all of the entire experience is totally unique, in my opinion, which again is a New Age statement because so-and-so and so-and-so, we all experience the Bible, we all experience this, but we all experience it in our own right. So how did you go from 20 years of New Age? How did your brain accept, or was it looking for maybe a structure, but how did you accept a deity, as it were?
Well, it's funny that you asked that because I wanted to tackle this notion of prison planet that you brought up.
Sure.
Because that was a big part of it. In 2011, 2012, I was part of Occupy Wall Street when I was living in San Francisco. The Occupy Wall Street had a San Francisco branch, and I was a part of that. And this is before wokeness was a thing. So it was possible for me to be, a white guy and still participate in a liberal political activism. I wanted the big banks to swing. I was furious. I mean, it was really clear that there was so much corruption coming from the top of the financial system. And I thought Occupy Wall Street at the time, where it started out, was like making a really strong comment, like, this is not okay. It got slid, but that's a whole other conversation.
Oh yeah.
So I would go to these meetings of Occupy, and there would be all these different interest groups that would all be arguing about whose issue was the most important. Like literally, like the spotted owl is the most important thing, or we need to, veganism is the most important thing, or stop, or green energy or whatever. They'd all be arguing. Everyone thought their thing was the most important thing. And I'm like, looking around all these people arguing, and I'm like, these things must be connected somehow.
Right.
That's just the way my mind works.
100%.
And so it was that pursuing that train of thought that ultimately led me to splash down not too long after discovering stuff like Jeffrey Epstein and those whole blackmail networks and everything. And that was like a whole big eye-opening thing specifically to the prison planet point. And then of course you start exploring that whole world of, all the symbolism in media, which I'm sure that you know about. And it's like everything, your eyes get open and you see the world for what it is. Right.
Right.
Okay, not everyone has gone through that process, but it's a real thing. Okay, so that's the prison planet. So and so I agree that that's
I love how you just glossed over Jeffrey Epstein and the children in this. You're just like,
Yeah,
that's a thing. But yeah,
well-
it's funny. We've talked about it ad nauseum on the show, but that was a
Okay.
really entertaining gloss over of a
okay,
major impact. Yeah.
well, yeah. So it gets even. I didn't know. I figured you probably talked about. Okay, so my red pill was called. It's called the Greenbaum speech. Have you ever heard about the Greenbaum speech, Dr. Corydon Hammond? No.
Maybe.
Okay. So the Greenbaum speech, Dr. Corydon Hammond was the world's leading expert on multiple personality disorder or dissociative identity disorder. World's leading expert. Like so many letters after his name, published books. Like he still has the leading textbook. At a conference this would have been in the 90s, I think. He gave a talk at the MPD, multiple personality disorder annual conference in America. He's like, okay, all of us who work in this field, we've all encountered patients who have a specific set of characteristics that we don't know what to do with it. I've been researching this for a long time, and I've finally cracked it. And today we're going to talk about it. And you can hear in the recording, everyone starts applauding. You can hear in the audio recording, everyone starts applauding. What Dr. Corydon Hammond had discovered was that children were being ritualistically abused to break their minds into like different pieces so that they can be programmed. And they're like, this is obviously an enormous network. You can find it by asking these non-leading questions. And he talks about this stuff for like an hour. And I was reading it. I was reading the text version, and I was reading this, and I was like, okay, this is credible information that does not fit into my existing worldview. Right? Like I can't argue with the source. It's the people are applauding. So clearly he's not the only one who thinks this. And I have nowhere to have nowhere to put this in my worldview. And so I had two choices in that moment, as everyone does when they encounter information that doesn't fit in the worldview. You throw out the information or you throw out the worldview. So I threw out the worldview. And then that was me tumbling down the rabbit hole.
Right. What year was this?
This was 2013. After 9/11, I watched Zeitgeist like everybody, if you remember that movie. And, I started getting into all that, but then I went to work in a big corporate job. And I was like, how is a conspiracy going to get everyone to get all the cats herded in the same direction? Like my small department that I work for can barely get anything done. How are they going to coordinate? It's kind of this naive belief. But when I was a kid, I loved reading about Bigfoot and UFOs and the Loch Ness Monster and all that stuff. So, I went in and out, but after reading the Greenbaum speech, it was like kaboom, my whole world was shattered. It was not a painful process. It was like, what is happening? So that's why
painful at all. It's utterly confusing, terrifying at points. And then you're left going, what the
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and it becomes, and the only way to really get through that is to begin acquiring more and more information. And then that process leads to that's where a lot of guys get lost. They follow down rabbit trails, or they start speaking out loud too much on social media, and they lose friends and family because it's this whole reprogramming kind of thing. I was very fortunate to realize like, I probably shouldn't be talking about this, because the information that I encountered was like, you can't just bring it up. Like, hey guys, did you know that they're abusing kids around the world? Like, you're not going to do that. You know what I mean? So because I got one of the reddest of red pills, I had to keep it to myself.
I got banned. Yes. That's where I got banned from the Twitters
for talking about stuff.
Yeah, and you and I talked too when I first reached out to you or first connected with you. When you followed me, you had the Instagram said this account normally shares false information. Are you sure you want to follow?
Mine said that?
No, mine said that.
Oh, okay.
For you, yeah. And I just recently got off what was supposed to be a 90-day, but it was like a 6-month shadow ban. Like they've just abused the hell out of me for posting these things. So when you say you're not supposed to say that, I just did.
Yeah.
And then I launched a podcast, and my podcast, there was another podcast that we had that was on Anchor, and it got pulled, wiped out. So Spotify bought Anchor and blew up our kernel. So that podcast was gone. So now I say to anyone that's got anything controversial to say, own your own kernel 100%.
Oh, you self-host?
I do. Yeah.
Oh, good for you. I should.
Yeah, so nobody's pulling this down.
I might actually want to talk to you about how to do that then.
Oh, I'll set you up with all the links. It's all run through the website, so you get a deal and all that sort of shit through us. I can point you through it. It's
nice. Okay. Yeah, because I would like to start. There's an author. Her name is Whitney Webb, and she wrote a pair of books called One Nation Under Blackmail. This is, you guys can't see it, but I just got these, and it's just like she just blows up the entire. It's really about the connection between organized crime, like the mafia, and intelligence services. And so it's like a 2-volume kind of thing. So I started reading it. And it's like she went deep, dude. She went deep. She went all the way back to like World War II. It's wild.
And if you're on a podcast where you're being where you're not in control of your seed, like if you're being hosted, I say Anchor because that's the one that we started with way back in the day. When Spotify bought them, they weren't down with it. They weren't down with what we were talking about.
I believe it.
So right now, Spotify doesn't like what I'm talking about. What they've done is they've put warnings on the episodes, and they've pulled a few episodes. So I don't remember which ones they were because it was so long ago. And I'm not even upset about it. I'm just like, whatever, it is what it is.
Right.
So they pulled some of the stuff that we were talking about. I think it was us correlating certain things to other things. Yeah.
I wonder what that would mean. Yeah.
Exactly. Let's just put it like that. And so they pulled the episode. So like my episode list is hilarious because it's like this a certain amount of episodes in, but it's a certain amount of episodes shown. I'm like, yeah. And then when those numbers become bigger, like more and more gradual, I'm like, okay, I see what you're doing. You're still pulling my episodes, but not telling me about it. But again, my episodes in their entirety are hosted on the website. So it works out really well.
That's good.
But if you're going to start talking about that shit, yeah, you're definitely going to want to self-host.
Well, I think it really ties in. It really ties into what it means to be a man. And I do want to get back to the prison planet thing, and I won't lose that thread. It really ties into being a man because in order to successfully be a masculine man in any era, you have to be willing to confront the truth first and foremost about yourself. If you're unwilling to confront the truth about yourself and to take that truth on, you'll never get anywhere. You'll continue to live in self-created illusions and lies, which is boyish behavior. So a man must first confront the truth about himself. Then he must confront the truth about others, and then he must confront the truth about the world. Because if you allow yourself to live in any kind of illusions or lies, first of all, you're in danger because the truth has an advantage over you, but you can't actually honestly assess your place in the world unless you have an honest assessment of the world. And so to me, talking about these things, people will say it's controversial or it's abrasive or it's confrontational. I'm like, look, I thought we were in the men do hard things movement. It's like, it's really hard to confront our bad ideas about reality. It hurts. It sucks to know that people have lied to us or that we believe lies. But, it's a painful process. But once you go through it, you're free. You're truly, truly free. And then you can move freely in the world and form authentic relationships with other powerful men who have themselves confronted the truth. And you're never done. You're never actually done. It's an ongoing thing, but it deeply ties to masculinity. So it's not necessarily profitable. It's not necessarily popular. It's not necessarily going to win me any friends. But like, to me, this is what it means to be a man. And if you're going to be strong to confront a barbell or strong to confront your profession, you have to be strong to confront reality. I don't see these things as being separate. No,
and you said it to me. You said it backwards, which is interesting too. You're like the Bizarro version of me. Bizarro. Like, we
both have very nice beards, by the way.
Oh, damn straight with you. You've been telling all these stories too. You're like you make yourself sound like you're 60 years old with all your stories, but you look like you're 25 for Christ's sake. So good regime, my friend.
Thank you.
But with regards to finding yourself, finding your man, finding the human, my jump from sales coaching, which was lucrative for me, was very third dimensionally a lucrative career. My jump from that into life coaching was the fact that when I was making the most amount of money I've ever made, when I was doing everything they told me to do, white picket fence, 2.5 kids, car, I don't have any kids, 2.5 cars, 7-car garage, all this shit. When I was living that dream, I was the most miserable I've ever been. And you talk about your red pill moments and that sort of thing. Ironically, again, everything's circling the ethos. Like this episode, I have yet to record, but it's been on my mind so much, The Dark Night of the Soul, which is a very new age statement. But that's what you were describing earlier on. At The Dark Night of the Soul, where you confront yourself. And when I jumped out of sales coaching, when I jumped into this was me going through a moment in my life and in my time where I couldn't put up with this shit anymore. And it was massive amounts of drug use, massive amounts of drinking, cigarettes, fast women, all these dumb things that I was doing, like consumption of I even got rid of pork, right? When I quit all this stuff. And the thing for me was this was a mass exodus of everything that once was, everything that they told me to be. the world lied so much that I was living in anxiety and depression.
Yes.
And this position, this jump to the life coach, this who I am today is 2017 again is when I made the shift, the big shift. And I've been slowly, I want to say I came crashing in like the Kool-Aid man, which I kind of did.
Oh yeah.
But then I had nowhere to go. So now I'm on the other side of things and I'm totally lost because it's totally foreign. So I didn't just hit the gas and go in one direction. I kind of creeped around for a bit and now I'm firmly speeding down the road. So I know kind of where it's all about, but to get rid of anxiety, to get rid of depression, to understand who you are, the world had to collapse. And this is one of those things where we talk about one of my running jokes on the show is I mean, everything that you've talked about, I'm sure you're very familiar with Tom Hanks and his triads. So I've always said that Tom Hanks being the running joke, Tom Hanks being the guy that got my initial show pulled because it was that we did. I quote right in there. I put right in the title, Tom Hanks and adrenochrome and all this sort of stuff. And we went right in it.
That'll do it.
And so, okay, so this was the biggest episode, right? So we had this episode that went in. This was only like, at the time, I think it was episode 14 or 15. But by the time we were at episode 24, that episode had over 200,000 downloads.
Wow.
So the world wanted to know, and it was that episode that got us pulled, for sure, because too many people.
I may have heard of that episode.
It's possible. It doesn't exist anymore. Well, it does.
Yeah.
I've got it on my computer, but it doesn't exist anymore. So this thing went massively viral, and yeah, a ton of hate came from it, which makes you realize at the time when you're attacked like that, you're like, shit, this is terrible. These are real people sending me messages. But then the more you realize it's probably just bots. And then when what's his name, Elon Musk went to buy Twitter, you realize that all of Twitter was a bot anyway.
Yeah.
Right. So it was all influenced and manipulated, from that get-go. I kind of lost my train of thought, but this all trails back to Prison Planet, which was, if the celebrities were only eating green jelly beans, none of us would have paid attention to what they were doing. Nobody would have cared.
Mm-hmm.
If the biggest thing was they were eating green jelly beans. So why I say that is because it is inside the pain that they caused and inside the observation that we made of them that we understood ourselves a little bit better. We understood our place in this world a little bit better, and we understood this world a little bit better. So there's another thing too that was talked about, which was the elites and how they have to tell you what they're doing, and it's all part of the game that they're playing, and they have to show this, that, and the other thing.
Revelation of the method.
Exactly. And Dale Carnegie was it Dale Carnegie? Outwitting the Devil was
Napoleon Hill. I have
Napoleon
that book.
Hill. So this is a conversation with one of those elites, and Outwitting the Devil is an elite sharing massive amounts of information.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And if you haven't heard Outwitting the Devil in a while, I strongly suggest you put it back on.
I have the book right there.
Well, there you go. So it is literally a conversation with an elite. I have another one too, a transcript right on my page. I'll bring it up and I'll send you the link. It's the Helluride, I want to believe it's called. Anyway, it's another conversation with the elites. And it's like, we're not going to give up any information. You have to ask specific questions, but we'll answer them. And these things are fascinating. So when they start sharing sort of what they're doing and why they're doing what they're doing, and he goes on to say inside this article that they don't want to do it, but it's the contract that they signed to help wake us up.
I've heard this theory.
All of these evil doers, quote unquote, out there are doing what they're doing because we signed on to this hashtag, quote unquote, soul contract.
Yeah, it's the deep new age belief.
Hashtag new age. Yeah. Right. So I'm pulling from this, but I'm again, like you said, I'm pulling what I like. I don't care much for crystals. I don't care much for this or that. Astrology is kind of neat. There's some interesting things in numerology. I don't understand it per se, but I've had some charts read on me, which are mind blowing.
Right.
So, I mean, it's all a math. It's all there. It's all something. But if these guys weren't here to be assholes, to wake us up, it's all part of the game that we're playing. And go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. I continue. Finish your thought.
So that was the Prison Planet that I'm saying. Like, we're here, we're doing this. We're sort of captivated by this idea, this moment. We live in our own prison based on the ideas that we have. We can't do this. Don't park here. You'll get a ticket. You'll get towed. Don't do this. Don't do that. We self-judge. We self-quarantine. We do all these things. We do what we're told to do because we don't know what else to do. And there's somebody out there that does know what we're capable of. There's somebody out there that does know all of the things that we can do. And it's them that's in charge of the television. It's them that's in charge of all of the things that we're allowed to ingest. And I've always said 1,000 times over, if there's 100 things arbitrarily that we're allowed to talk about or that we can talk about or topics for discussion, humanity only knows about 6 of them. And we talk about them ad nauseum in multiple different facets and ads. But there's so many more things out there. And if you venture into any of those things, they call you names. Conspiracy theorist, what happened?
Yeah.
Tinfoil hatter.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm glad you brought up that idea that these people have that we've signed onto a soul contract in order to facilitate our awakening, because this is important. So and I haven't heard that idea in a while. I'm familiar with it. There's other material called Hidden Hand, and Wing Makers is another one. So because I explored a lot of these ideas too. Okay. So I'm going to talk my way through this. So the idea is that in order to facilitate human awakening, that these people need to inflict we've signed on, we've asked them, we've contracted with them to inflict massive suffering on the human race in order to facilitate our awakening, because that's what they're doing. Like, they're inflicting massive suffering in terms of like child sex trafficking, EMF pollution, plastics, everything. Like, the war is total. It's this total war against all aspects of what it means to be a human, body, mind, heart, and spirit. And we have signed a contract with them in order to ask them to persecute us so that we can awaken. That's the idea.
Right.
I think that idea is profoundly dark and is also blaming the victim and is Stockholm syndrome thinking. Like, oh, if we're doing this to you, it's because you asked for it. It's like, since this is not a family friendly show. Fuck that. Fuck that.
Oh, we're very family friendly, ladies.
Okay. Yeah, yes. So you know what I mean. So the thing is, this idea, like, oh yeah, no, all these ways that we're abusing all of humanity, like, it's just to get you to wake up. It's just to get you to wake up. It's just to get. And so it's like, when you look at the past couple years, 2020 until today, as the dial has been turned up to 11, like, yeah, people are waking up, but the amount of suffering and death that's been created, is extreme, to the point now people, even people who had denied the existence of evil previously, are like, okay, this is kind of crazy. What's going on? And so I think that's an actually inverted picture of what's going on. Okay. The actual picture of what's going on is that we as humans, there is actually a better way to wake up, rather than being persecuted through suffering, by being subject to suffering, by being tortured. The other way to wake up is through Christianity. It's through the process of sin and repentance and baptism, and then sanctification and regeneration of the heart. That is the direction of true freedom. And so what you'll see is that the people who believe that we've signed a soul contract and we need to torture you now, when you say, well, I think I'm going to go over there to Christianity, what they say is, don't do that. No, you don't want to do that. That's the really bad stuff, which is exactly what evil would say, right? Is to prevent us from actually going down the path that lies towards true freedom. And so when you talk about the prison planet, you talk about Satan, like, Satan is the one saying, no, you need me. You need me to wake up. It's like, wake up to what? Wake up to your original divinity? Like, no. Like, that's a mistaken set of beliefs that binds you into this contract with him. Like, okay, no, I need you to torture me, make me suffer in order so that I can awaken, instead of like, no, it can be just this easy going and accepting sin and repentance if we're willing to give. And you said Christianity is restrictive. Yes, it is, but it's only restrictive towards things that aren't good for us in the first place. Like, Christianity doesn't say you can't do these things because it's arbitrary. You can't, the things that Christianity says not to do are bad for us. I'll give you an example: promiscuity. Like, we can't miss the impact of sexual liberation and the negative impact on men and women today. You can't. There's a book by Dr. E. Michael Jones, another guy who gets called a conspiracy theorist, called Libido Dominandi, that talks about the 250 or so year process to sexually liberate everybody and then to politically enslave them. Like, that's the trade-off. We will sexually liberate you, and then we'll politically enslave you, right? That's the whole book is about that. You'll love it. It's an excellent book, exquisitely researched. And so that promiscuity isn't actually good for us. Like, yeah, it feels good, but it's not actually good for us. So when Christianity says, yeah, don't do that, it's like, don't do that because I say so. Because if you do that, you're going to hurt yourself, right? And so the restriction that people bristle up against, and again, I've been to Burning Man and I've seen and I've seen many of the things and participated in some of them where it's like, yeah, no, you can't tell me what to do. It's like ultimately I realized that I was doing something self-defeating. And so I was able to give all those things up to experience true freedom and to transcend, to exit this paradigm of I need to be actively persecuted in order to awaken. It's like, no, I can be free of all that if I just accept my freedom and say I'm sorry and give up a few things called sin in the process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not okay. So again, I'm not knocking that. I like it. I just don't think it works. And this is where it's like, it's totally cool that I'm allowed to have that thought.
Of course.
Like your thought works too. For me, I gave up promiscuity. I gave up,
all. And I didn't mean to accuse. That was just an example.
I never took it that way.
Okay, cool.
Because we never even touched on it, so you wouldn't know.
Okay.
But I gave up promiscuity. I gave up indulgence. I gave up a lot. And it wasn't that I'd come to Christ. It was that I had walked away. And when you say things like, when the message is, go over there and do it without pain. My personal teacher was pain.
Absolutely.
I suffered greatly until I didn't. And now I understand what you're saying, how you could literally just go and give up, repent, not give up, but like repent and forego sin and accept Jesus into your life. When Jesus was in my life, was in the most amount of pain. And it's not that he's not in my life right now, because I'm not saying I don't believe in Jesus or I don't believe in this, because I love the idea that there's something. Now what it is, I don't know. But when you said too, that it sounds like the devil would say, don't do those things. In my quote unquote new age mentality, and I use the term new age so loosely. I don't even like that label. But
yeah, we don't have a language to describe what we're talking about, but I know what you mean.
Yeah. I believe that there's a high likelihood that the devil wrote the Bible. Right? If the devil's real, and then I believe that the devil wrote the Bible. And if God is real, as he's delivered through Christianity, then why wouldn't he just eradicate the devil? So
I'm glad that you brought that up, because I want to speak to that, because it solves the problems we're talking about. Go ahead.
Okay. So there are holes in every single story, which is the amazing part of the story, because with those holes, you're allowed to create a truth. You're allowed to solve the puzzle. And in my life, the greatest thing that I've ever had is the ability to solve the puzzle. I love problem solving.
Sure, yeah.
And this, to me, is the greatest problem in the entire world.
Problem of evil.
No, the problem of life.
Oh, well, yeah.
Exist is the number one thing that needs to be solved. Right? It's not good and it's not evil, because again, good and evil is also fluid. Right? Okay. So from a Christian standpoint, yeah. Right. But I'll tell you this right now, from a non-Christian standpoint, if I knew ahead of time that you were going to be responsible, and nobody can know this, but if you were going to be responsible for killing my entire family, you drove into my family who was in one van, they were all in there, and you killed them all. If I knew that I could save my entire family by killing you first, I would be in a predicament. But
I mean, it's not possible for you to know that. Like, so it's like it's like an unanswerable. If I knew that, like it's literally impossible that you would know that, because we don't have the vision.
It's Kobayashi Maru.
It is. It's a hypothetical situation that itself has a flaw at the center of it, because we don't have knowledge of the future. None of us do. So like it would be impossible for you to be put in that situation where you would be forced to confront that. Like this is what the movie Minority Report is about with Tom Cruise, right? Where it's like, how can you convict someone of a crime they haven't committed? Oh, we looked into the future. It's like, well, the future is at best, at best probabilities. That's a whole, like what the future is, a whole longer conversation. But I mean, you would never be able to know that as the thing. So the hypothetical, I get what you're trying to set up, that like it would put you in a moral quandary between taking an innocent life, because I am innocent at that point, to protect other innocent lives. But you would never actually be put in that situation.
True. So again, hypothetical, but I mean, again, good and evil, maybe it's not fluid, but for the most part, it's subjective anyhow.
I
Like,
I mean,
look at the government. Let's look at the government for a minute. Let's get a bit political. In Canada, I'm a terrorist. I am a domestic terrorist because, no joke,
yeah.
because I speak against Trudeau, and he has called me out. Maybe not by name.
Okay, I was gonna say.
Yeah, but he has called me out as a domestic terrorist, and I'm not a bad person. But to
Right.
the eyes of anyone who listens to him, I'm the devil. They can't find a single person who Jeffrey Epstein sold a child to, but they know if you donated $25 to the truckers in Ontario and in
Right.
Canada.
hmm
Right. So why are we allowing evil to run the world?
Well, because and that is the big question, the problem of evil, the prison planet that we come back to.
Back to the prison planet.
Right. Okay. So the dynamic of pain and suffering causing what we'll say transcendence is a real dynamic. Like you can see it. Like, yes, my periods of personal growth, for everyone's personal growth, 2020 was one of the best years of my life. And I know lots of men that have said the same. Yeah, 2020 sucked as a year, right? But we all had this experience of, wow, by suffering we grew. That is a real thing, right? Now, why does that happen? Why does that appear to be a thing? It appears to be a thing. The new age quote worldview that you communicated, that philosophy that you communicated, was that suffering creates growth means that we have asked for suffering,
Right.
Like we've worked with the devil, say, or evil, whatever, to say, make us suffer so we can grow. Okay, that explains the true dynamic that suffering causes growth. Christianity's explanation of that is that God allows evil to exist because ultimately it serves his end in glory. Ultimately, this suffering dynamic is permitted to exist by God because over time he will only make good things come out of it. And you can see this in the book The Silmarillion by J.R.R. Tolkien. It was the prequel sort of to The Lord of the Rings. In the very and Tolkien was Catholic, and everyone loves Tolkien. So in The Lord of the Rings, like, it's part of us as a society and a part of us as men. So in the beginning of The Silmarillion, he actually tells that story, that the god of Middle Earth, the god who created Middle Earth, is called Eru Iluvatar. And Eru Iluvatar creates a whole bunch of other creative beings, one of whom is Melkor, and Melkor decides that he's just going to do his own thing. And Eru Iluvatar says to Melkor is like, the mentor of Sauron later. So Melkor is like the devil in Middle Earth. He says, you will see, Melkor, and I can actually pull up the quote because I wrote it down. You will see that these things that you do will feed into even greater good than you can imagine. So whereas the New Age philosophy that you're talking about says we have contracted with evil to make us suffer so we grow, God looks at that and says, I allow suffering to exist because it makes people grow, which will ultimately serve my greater glory. But evil has no independent existence of its own. It only serves the good. So it gives a different kind of perspective on it. Not that we've asked for suffering, but that God allows it to exist because it does facilitate his glory. But there is a way out of that. There is a way out of that level of suffering where we're no longer bound to the devil. And that's the story that Christianity tells. So it looks at the same thing and gives a slightly different answer to it. Not that we've asked for suffering, because we haven't, but that it's allowed to exist by God because it does make us better, but that's not the end of the story.
I think another thing too, that I have to ask when accepting God as my savior is, I'm a firm believer in infinite greatness and infinite smallness. And the question then
I
would
need you to unpack that for me. Okay.
Infinite smallness is, we can take a microscope and zoom in on something. I remember recently, like in the summertime, somebody like thinly sliced a hot dog. You saw this meme, and they zoomed in on this fucking thing, and there's like an organism inside living in the hot dog, but it was like so microscopic, but it was alive in the hot dog. And people like freaked out because there's something moving inside the hot dog on an absolute microscopic scale.
Yeah, same. I've got an apple sitting here next to me. The same is probably true.
Of course, you could zoom in on that, and there'd be an organism in there living.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's infinite smallness. and that it can keep going into the quantum realm, because we can start
Mhm.
talking about quantum mechanics,
Mhm.
quantum physics, quantum entanglement is all things that they've talked about being provable.
Mhm.
And that's all fascinating, absolutely fascinating. So wherein the story gets interesting is when we go into infinite greatness. If you and I have the ability to stick our eyeball up to something and take a look inside your apple and see a worm, hello, my baby, hello, my honey, hello, my right gal. Something above us has the ability to zoom in on us,
Yeah.
right? So we were created in God's own image. Do you like superheroes at all? Do you like the superhero stories? Do you watch the movies?
Some of them. I
Marvel?
thought the Captain America Winter Soldier's pretty good. Civil War was pretty good too. Some
Do
of
you know
them are better than
Do you know what the new one's called?
woke garbage.
New
You-
World
you-
Order. Yeah, Captain America, New World Order. They're not even hiding it anymore. That's a whole other topic.
Is it gonna have Chris Robert? Was his name? I don't remember his name.
No,
Is it
they
gonna-
got the other guy. They've got the black guy in it now, Anthony Mackie.
Oh
and
gosh,
that-
okay.
And so that was
With his terrible costume. That's the most ugliest costume.
he's no longer the Falcon. He's now Captain America.
Oh, of
And
course,
so-
because the Little Mermaid is also yeah. It's fine.
Black. And here's the funny thing too. If we just simply, and this is where the world gets upset when I say this, if we just simply stop being led by the media, racism goes away.
Yes and no. I mean, like the capital R racism, that's the biggest scourge in the universe right now. That goes away for sure. But like
Yes.
racism's a thing around the world. It's just only in America where we're made to feel really, really, really terrible about it.
Well, okay, so racism, I mean, shit, we're off topic. I can get on the topic of racism, but
It's the whole thing.
it's a taught trait, right? You are the result of your programming as a human.
Mhm.
So you wake up in the morning as a child, you don't hate somebody based on the color of their skin. You're taught that shit.
Yeah,
And
okay, that's true.
So today, day one, we turn the media off, racism goes away. And generations down the road, it's gone, right? But what we're doing right now is perpetuating it on
Oh, I see what you mean. Okay,
different-
yeah,
different
I get it.
levels.
Mhm.
Anyway, what the hell was I talking about? Oh yeah, infinite greatness and infinite smallness.
Captain America.
We're everywhere, baby.
Where we are
So
off-roading.
exactly, but that's what these conversations. That's what they're great for.
I
So
know.
the infinite greatness is something above us looking down on us. We're just an organism in somebody else's hot dog right now.
Mhm.
Right. So what does that have to say? What does that have to say about God? And that to me is the thing. Like, yeah, we were created sure and in His image, but infinite greatness and infinite smallness have to be examined. We've got this arrogance about us on this planet that okay. So first of all, I'll say this too. Your red pill was that document that who was it that
The Greenbaum speech.
Greenbaum.
I'll send it to you for the show notes.
I'll take a look at that for sure.
It's amazing.
My biggest red pill, aha, Jesus effing Christ, sort of take the Lord's name in vain, was the flat earth.
Oh wow, here we go.
So I don't believe in flat earth now.
Okay.
I absolutely,
Oh, I see.
but I don't believe in globe earth either.
Okay.
So now for me, I look at this and I take that red pill as in these motherfuckers lied to us about absolutely everything.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And when you start looking into it, there is zero proof of curvature anywhere in any
Mhm.
capacity at any point. And that to me is very interesting because that then ties into the Truman Show. They've done a ton of stuff with regards to all of this pre-programming as to what is how did Universal Studios know what the globe was beforehand, yada yada yada. Why is I mean, I could go on and on and on and on.
Yeah.
But once you start looking into it, there is no proof of the curve. Flat Earth in and of itself had its holes, but then you got to look into concave Earth, you got to look into hollow Earth, you got to look into all of these other possibilities, and there are some truths to all of them.
Mhm.
Now, with regards to like the black cube Saturn, the black sun,
That's a whole thing.
yeah, the black sun and all that new age stuff that goes into that, and all of these people like, and they say Satan is actually the mother god, and it's the god Saturn, and she is the mother healer, but she's been
Saturn is?
bastardized. Saturn is, yeah.
Oh,
She's
okay.
been bastardized by this, and they say the black sun of Saturn, the black cube, is actually the night sky, right? So when we look up at the sky, if you picture instead of us being a ball looking out at an expanse, we're literally an inverted ball looking into a black sky, so something inside of it, like the jelly filling of a donut. And so that is the black sun. Soundgarden sang of it, black hole sun.
Yeah.
All about that.
Yeah.
That's the black sun that they're talking about.
It's an occult Nazi symbol as well.
Yeah. Okay. So the Nazi symbol once was a symbol of love and all that sort of stuff, and then it was bastardized.
That's a swastika.
The swastika, yeah, the swastika is the four poles. It also stems from the ability to find Eden, so the Garden of Eden on planet Earth. It's been removed from the maps that we've been able to see, but that swastika was the four rivers leading into the four continents, leading into the center island, which was Eden. So that whole thing has been bastardized. Our entire history has been bastardized, but I've been trying to get to infinite greatness, infinite smallness.
Yes,
with regards to your precious God. No, I joke when I say that stuff because I love the idea, and at no point would I ever say he can't exist. And that's one of those things where that I will firmly put my foot down and say everything's possible. But infinite, and actually I'll tie this in. I'll go both ways. So infinite smallness, we zoom in. Science has zoomed in to the atom, which is the building block of society. The atoms that built your skin suit also built this desk and this pen and this webcam that I'm talking through. The atom built that. And inside the atom is quarks, and quasons, which are electricity. So the building block of society is the atom. The building block of the atom is electricity. I firmly believe that we currently exist on the holodeck, i.e. Star Trek.
And most of matter is empty space.
Yeah, that to me is the one thing that makes the most sense out of all of this. And the ability to have this conversation is absolutely enjoyable because of it. Now, infinite greatness, humanity, to those who believe in the globe, also believe that any aliens that will come to us are the same size as us. Yet we've all seen that roaming gif of like, this is you, this is Earth, this is Mars, this is the sun, this is the red star Demetrius, this is the blue star solar polar anus redemption, this is the mega uber duper star.
Yeah.
So the thing that I would say is they've also told us that space is forever expanding. Round Earth, flat galaxy. Space constantly grows and everything, and and then in Christianity and God knows the positioning of every single star in the sky, blah blah blah, which is probable because the stars in the sky have never changed since the dawn of time, regardless of us flying through infinite space and spinning around the heliocentric God's sun, the Helios, etc., etc., etc. So if we were to be that planet in space, flying through space, and we were worried about aliens invading us and taking our natural resources, making it a personal thing, oh God, they're after us specifically, right? Technically, because those planets are huge, the beings on those planets would be equally as huge, and we on Earth would literally be space dust to one of their ships that could just fly by in the infinite space size that is space, the infinite. Right. So to me, our own audacity has limited our belief in our ability to cognitively see what could possibly be. Are we going to be invaded by aliens with regards to New Age or
it's a whole thing? Have we already been?
Of course we will be. Yeah. Yeah. Where we are, space as delivered, in my opinion, doesn't exist. Aliens are called extraterrestrials for a reason. The idea that there's extra Earth beyond the ice walls, I firmly believe in. I believe a lot of our answers are inside the moon, not inside it, but within, like by being able to look at it, I believe it's going to tell us a lot.
I agree that the moon, there's a lot to the moon. It's a very complicated subject.
It's stunning. It's beautiful. It's the mystery that just hangs above our, you know what the moon is to me? You remember the magic eye back in the day? And they were in all the malls. And if you stared at it, it was like garbage. And then it just became like a sailboat or some shit.
I've never been able to do that, but I know that it's a thing.
I'll teach you one day. So that's what the moon is. I take so many pictures of the moon and I've got a high powered camera. And when you look at it and you train your eye to see it differently than they've told you how it's delivered, you can see so many different things in your brain. Your brain's trying to compute something different, but it's just not there. You're staring at the truth in plain sight, and one day it'll be made clear. But what it is, I don't know. But I'm fascinated by it. So again, I don't really know where I was going, but I covered a lot.
That's
of
okay.
on
Yeah,
the-
yeah, this is great. This is awesome. I love all this stuff. So, okay, we can go after. You want to talk about infinite greatness and infinite smallness?
hot dogs.
Okay, hot dogs. Okay, so the Christian story, and I'm going to phrase this as a dialogue between two worldviews. So that okay, so the Christian story is that we actually aren't that significant of beings, humans. You know, there's a big galaxy out there. You know, galaxy, universe. There's so much going on. You know, right? But the paradox of the Christian story is that for as unimportant as humans are in the grand cosmic scale, as unimportant as we are, God still felt that we were important enough to take on human form and to suffer horribly and die for our mistake, Adam's mistake in the garden. That even though we're perhaps the least significant and most broken creatures in the entire universe, that God still loved us so much to come down, take on human form, suffer and die for our sins as a race to redeem us and bring us closer to him. And that's the paradox, that we mean nothing at all, but at the same time, God still loves us enough to suffer and die for us. So much so that even the angels are like, look, we don't get it. Like, they're just humans. There's so much else going on. Why would God himself come down and take on human form to rescue this broken race? But that's how much God loves his creation of us. That's the paradox that's so difficult to reconcile. No, in the grand scheme of things, we don't mean anything. But in the grand scheme of things, we still mean so much to God, enough that he would come down as Christ and suffer and die for us. That's the paradox that's very difficult to reconcile. And the paradox is only resolved with the notion of what it means to be a father. Like the prodigal son, the parable of the prodigal son. You know, the dad is there with all of his kids, and then one son goes off and ends up like eating with pigs in the trough, and then comes back, and the father's like, welcome back. Oh my gosh, here, have my ring and come back into the feast. You know, my son is back. And that can only resolve. That's how God the Father looks at us, that we as a race, as a whole species, have gone off to really feed in the pig's trough with drugs and alcohol and promiscuity and all these different things that aren't good for us. When we come back to God, God says, you still mean so much to me. And that's the only possible to understand that as a father, which I hear you saying that you are. I'm not a father yet.
No,
but
not a father.
You're not. Okay. But certainly, like, you know fathers like that, or you can imagine within yourself, you know, what it's like even my most lost son, I still love enough to welcome him back into the fold, if he's willing to give up his ways that are counterproductive. Because he can't come into my house and eat at the pig's trough, but I don't want him to. I want him to come and eat at the banquet table with me and not be in the pig's trough. And that's the paradox that Christianity presents to humanity, is even though we're lost and fallen and broken and sinful and angry and vindictive and bitter and victim consciousness and all that, when we repent and come back to God, he welcomes us back because we still mean enough for him to die for us. Like, what a gift. That's the power of it. And it means we're profoundly not alone in the cosmos. But that solves the paradox. Just to close the thought, that solves the paradox of greatness and smallness. Yes, we are profoundly small, meaninglessly small, like the organism in the food, but still so important as creation, as creatures, that God would suffer and die for us. And that's incredible to me.
Unless you're gay.
Well, no, he still suffered and died, but you can't. You have to give up. You have to give up your sinful behavior. Homosexual, like who knows where homosexuality comes from? There's lots of information about where a lot of it comes from.
Mercury.
But But the thing is, it's like it's like when you listen to really good preachers. I meant the
injection, not the planet.
Oh, yeah, yeah. It's a whole thing.
No, it is a whole thing. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen listening to this right now, that was a joke. I was making light of a situation, but there is validity in that. Our insanities and our brain and the way our brains are wired. They're saying that, you know, that the vaccines and the things that they've stuck in us and the stuff that they put in our food and the shit that we've ingested for a copious amount of time have bbeen absolutely detrimental. There's something called fluoride nitrate or something like that. It's not this typical fluoride that you find in the water. Mm-hmm. There is a fluoride, something. I can't remember the term right now. It's worth looking up. It is attracted to aluminum. And so when you ingest small particles of this fluoride through your oral orifices, and then you put on deodorant your entire life that's got aluminum in it,
Yeah.
And the deodorant is very closely connected to a lot of your arteries with regards into your heart. You
Yeah.
are drawing
under the arms.
exactly. You are drawing through the aluminum. You are magnetizing this fluoride compound and it's basically it's pulling through your brain. It's pulling through your body. It's going the aluminum is going into your body through your biggest pores, and it's where the Alzheimer's is coming from. It's where the heavy metal poisoning is one of these things that's consistent.
Oh, I believe that. I stopped wearing deodorant a couple years ago. I don't need it. Like, you stop dressing up your body and all these corrosive chemicals, you stop smelling bad. No one tells me I smell bad anyway.
Yeah, you smell great. Where are all my friends? I know, but
that cuts close, man.
I know that hurts, man.
That hurts, man. That hurts.
I know this, right? Like the idea that we smell is entertaining. Like humanity has pubic hair to capture the essence of your pubic region and to create that pheromone that makes you attractive to the opposite sex. Right. That exists in our own DNA for that reason. So you want to smell, it's like for years and years and years, did humanity were we born with showers? No, you hose yourself off if you got into a lake at some point, right?
I found a river.
Exactly. But for the most part, humanity didn't have natural indoor plumbing. So all of the stuff that we talk about, and it's all vanity. It's all the media. It's the exact same thing that you and I have been talking about this whole time. You wear your face paint, you wear your makeup, you wear your ball cap, you do your beard a certain way, you wear cologne, whatever it is, because you feel inadequate, because the world through the television has made you feel inadequate. Imagine if tomorrow morning every female on the planet woke up absolutely in love with herself. How many companies would just go out of business? Right? That's one of the things that nobody really truly grasps or understands, that no matter what's going on and no matter how great we want to talk about the men, the women, the this, the that, we're all under attack from the television. We're all under attack from the media, from this, that, and the other thing.
Yeah. And
this is one of those things where it's been, for the longest time, it's been them against us, but it's also been them making us against us.
Yes. Right. And the thing is, all these things that you're describing, aluminum salts, fluoride, under attack from the media, all these things, right, that we all agree on. The worldview that you communicated said that we've asked for that.
Yeah.
Like, that's the part that it's like, no, we didn't ask for that. Now, it's part of reality that we can't deny, but to say like, yes, please abuse me more. I need more and more and more. Pollute my body, castrate my children, inject this into my bloodstream, blast EMF at my head, pollute my food, make me ashamed of existence, create so much suffering. That's what I need to wake up. Hit me more. Like, no.
Yeah.
No. That's the part where
you say that and then you're like, no, I hear you saying that. I'm like, yeah. That's exactly what's happening. Yeah.
No, because look, has it like that amount of suffering that's being created? Has it created the opposite amount of awakening? Now, it's one thing to be aware to the nature of reality, to have mental awareness. It's another thing to be so holy, because the amount of suffering we're all under is so much. Have we actually become holy as a result of it? No. We wake up, we see reality, we speak truth, we become confident and grounded, but we don't become holy because what's being done to us is unholy. I think we can agree that unholy things are being done to us. Is it making us holy in response? No, it's making us awake, but that's not the same thing as holy. And that's where the suffering that's inflicted doesn't end up in the right level of return. It's not balanced, right? The only way that we become holy is through sanctification and regeneration through Christ. So we can wake up, and that's what happened. As I woke up and I realized all this stuff, and it got me to a point, but it wasn't until I got baptized and started becoming a practicing Christian that I actually started becoming holy in response. Not to the degree that I would ever say that I'm holy in any way, but where I started feeling that in myself, like, no, there's something really good and pure and true within me that I have to share. That's completely different from head awareness, that comes from the heart, that comes from within me. And that's what Christianity promises, right? And that isn't delivered by the amount of suffering that's created by, one might say, the contract, right?
I absolutely adore this conversation because we are literally saying the exact same thing, but coming to totally different places.
Cool.
Now, my question to you is, twofold. Actually, I want to bring something up. You talked about God repenting for our suffering, for Adam's decision.
God's suffering for, he didn't repent. He had nothing to repent for. We have to repent, but suffering as for humans, a human sacrifice for human sin.
Okay.
And
I
so,
get that.
yeah. No, it matters because we could never say we're going to pick, Tom over there. Tom, you're going to be the scapegoat for all our sin and we're going to sacrifice you. That wouldn't work. So God's like, okay, I'll do it myself. Like if you want something done right, you got to do it yourself. Right. There's a lot of that in Christianity too.
So my question then is if Adam, wait a second, if Eve ate the apple,
And Adam, yeah.
what's that?
Adam and Eve both did. She started it, but he let her.
Well, who's eating the apple now?
Me.
Damn. So if Eve ate the apple, why did it get stuck in Adam's throat?
I don't know what you mean.
Well, all men have an Adam's apple, but Eve's the one that ate the apple.
Oh, I don't know. That's an interesting question.
That's a good one. Now, another one too is
Because okay, I can give you an answer. Because ultimately, the covenant that God made was with Adam, not with Eve. So Adam let Eve eat the apple. Eve ate the apple, and she's like, and here's the thing. Here's what I think was going on. God had said, if you eat the apple, you will surely die. And so Eve goes over and gets tempted by the serpent. Adam is there. It's pretty clear from the language. Adam's there. He's watching that happen. He's like, I wonder what's going to happen. And then she eats it and she doesn't die. He's like, oh, okay. And then he eats the apple. And then God comes down and is like, what'd you do? And because the contract was not between God and Eve, but between God and Adam. So if Eve had eaten the apple and Adam was like, and she swallowed, he's like, I'm not going to do that, and crushed the head of the serpent. And God had come down and he's like, what happened? It's like, oh, Eve ate the apple. I'm sorry. I'll take responsibility for it. We'd all be good. But it was because Adam broke his covenant with God. And so maybe the Adam's apple is because as a reminder, like, hey, remember that thing that you did? Wasn't a good idea.
So another thing with religion in that sense too is, well, two things. You denounced soul contracts and then talked about Adam's soul contract, first off. Secondly,
it was a covenant. It was a covenant that God had, it was a covenant that God had made with Adam.
I know, I'm busting your balls, but it's relatively the same thing.
What is it? It matters, but yeah, I get it.
Semantics. Also, the reversal, the bastardization of these things. Now, I'm going to jump. I don't know how much time you have. Like we're about 20 minutes over the standard hour.
That's fine. That's fine. I have until it's 12:30 now. I have until around 1:30.
There you go. I don't know how long we're going to go, but the Adam and Eve, the reversal, the bastardization of this is that Adam created Eve God created Eve from Adam's rib.
Because it is not good for a man to be alone.
Right. But now the truth of the matter is every single person on this planet has passed through the gateway of a woman.
Mm-hmm. So
the initial story is that the woman came from the man, yet everyone comes from the woman. An interesting reversal. Now, there's no need to expand upon that, but my question to you, now back into a quote unquote conspiracy, of it all.
Mm-hmm.
Are you familiar with the transvestigations?
The transvestigations? So
the implication that celebrities aren't male or female.
Oh, I've heard a lot of this. Yeah, this gets into the whole cloning thing, which is like, oh, that's just I mean, I've heard a lot of this. Yes,
right. So now again, all of these things are every last thing that we've talked about is a possibility, right? Until we get out of here, there's no factual anything.
That makes sense based on their religion that they would do.
So my question is, if you put any thought into it, do you think that they are what they appear to be on face value? Do you believe that the queen was a lizard?
I don't think the queen was.
How great was that?
I mean, I don't believe that the queen was a lizard person. Like I think that in many cases, I think in many cases that's a metaphor for the inhuman, cold, calculating, power-hungry behavior that we associate with lizards, that a lot of the losers who run the world seem to exhibit. Because that's what I call them. They're not elite, they're the losers who run the world. Now, 100%. Was that the queen? I think that the queen was friends with Jimmy Savile is pretty sus, right? Like, I mean, like when you Jimmy Savile, like he was, like, you look at the photos and all that stuff, it's like, okay. So a lot of the people who are at the quote unquote top of the power hierarchy of the prison planet, they don't exhibit human behavior. They're cold, they're calculating, they're
Right.
utterly ruthless, and they in a very real sense like eat their young. And I think that's where this notion of lizard people comes from, that it's not like the movie V where they take off their mask and it's a lizard underneath, but that was, I mean, in plain sight. Maybe, but I think what's definitely true to say is that many people at the highest echelons of power, perhaps even almost all of them, if not all of them, have a lizard-like inhuman cold quality, cold-blooded, right?
It's a great answer. I would
And Satan was a serpent. Satan was a serpent, so there's that too.
right. And so this then lies in the fact that humanity has been led to believe that we are the top of the food chain. But this is what I think.
Right.
You know, I think that with regards to celebrity, like we've all seen those pictures of Jay-Z hanging out, you know, in the 1800s or whatever.
What?
We're also
Jay-Z?
Jay-Z,
What?
yeah, that like celebrities are like over 100 years old.
I've not seen that. This is new.
Oh, so yeah, there's all these pictures of all these celebrities that we know today, but like from the 1800s and all that sort of stuff, like they're all old timey.
Okay, I haven't
They're
seen
like,
those.
oh, it's doppelgangers. I'm like, yeah, that's cool. You know, but there's also the story of Tartarians. We've been fed the story of vampires our entire lives.
That's the whole thing, yeah.
You know, so I mean, the idea too, I firmly believe that Hollywood has, you know, taken our truth from us and sold it back to us.
I agree.
Right. And, you know, we've got things like Superman, for example. He takes his power from the red sun, yellow sun of Earth. Right. And this to me is the thing. Like you got Bill Gates over here trying to block out the sun.
Oh.
You know, when you go into, I mean, that's how Matrix started, right? We don't know who started the war, but we do know who blocked out the sun.
Right.
You know, and so it's like, you know, there's a time where I would have been like, life is imitating art, but it's not. Art has always shown us a truth, a hidden truth.
Mm-hmm. Inverted, upside down, backwards, clouded. Yeah, always.
Absolutely. And you look at this stuff and you're like, there's answers in that. And when you're crazy like me, you know, when you got all that aluminum in your blood, you start looking for answers and you start talking about things you're not allowed to talk about, and you start seeing things you're not supposed to see. Then you start connecting the dots, and then you start realizing, shit, it's not even that, they're not even hiding it. Like once you do start seeing it, you can't unsee it.
Right.
So, I mean, these are the things too that people will say, and you even touched on here, like all of this stuff is like crazy. It's chaos. It's evil. It's dark.
Yeah.
You know, we're not here to do that. But I'll tell you from my experience that because of all of this and because of this absolute absurdity, I no longer suffer from anxiety or depression.
Praise God.
Because the anxiety and depression that I suffered was my truth, was my essence, was my best I could say, my soul, going against everything the world ever taught me. Not
you could
fitting
feel
in.
like a splinter in your mind driving you mad.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So now I am in a position where I'm even to the point where they took the word woke, right? People were waking up on massive levels. And then all of a sudden it was woke culture. I'm like, bitch, you stole that. Like that, you can't, you bastardize waking up. Oh, you're so woke. Oh, you're waking up. You're so woke. No, man, it's night and day. So you look at this and you're like, even the universe goes on to this. And when you talk about suffering, the way you talked about it, see, here's another thing too, that I firmly believe in following the patterns. I started noticing patterns at a very young age. I would say 1987's Mike Tyson's Punch Out. It took me a minute to realize that these guys are dropping patterns and you can just follow the patterns and walk through the game. Right. So that parlayed out into a lot of things in my life.
Wait, say more about that. Cause I remember I love Mike Tyson's Punch Out.
Okay. So when was the last time you played it?
It would be a while ago, but I did memorize the code to get to Mike Tyson on the bus, and I could still remember it. 0073735963. That'll get you to Mike Tyson and Mike Tyson's Punch Out.
Perfect. So I've got the game somewhere. I've never in my life beaten Tyson. I just don't have the, I guess at the time I never had the dexterity.
It's a whole thing.
Now you go back to that game and every single character that you meet up with is demonstrating a pattern. So you just repeat the pattern and you beat them.
Yes.
You can just march through the game. I've never beaten Tyson, but I'm able to march through the game for the most part. You spot the pattern, you see what they're doing, and you just carry on. And it's fascinating. So when you see these patterns and when you see this this play out in real life, or whatever we believe real life to be, you know, you're like, well, I can see it and I can walk through it.
Got it.
You know, I can see past these things. And it's pattern spotting that is necessary. I firmly believe too in the pattern spotting and in the video game world, and this probably doesn't line up with Christianity. But I believe in NPCs. I believe in non-player characters. I believe that there are entities in this reality that are here to tell you where the map is for level 4. But if you go on in life and you come back to them, they're still going to tell you roughly where the map is to level 4. You know, they're never going to be able to, they're never going to outlive their programming.
Sure. Yeah, that's a whole thing.
I also believe that at one point we were NPCs, you know, and the desire to get there was a glitch in the thing. A prime example of that is the movie Free Guy with what's his name? Ryan Reynolds.
It just came out, right?
Yeah. So Free Guy is literally the telling of awareness, of waking up, of humanity waking up, going from an NPC to waking up. Now, he was already asking questions. He was already glitched out because he was programmed different. But I think that that's the case. I believe that we are energy, and I believe that that's what's happening. You know, I also believe that there's a very high likelihood that at the end of this, we click out. You know, when we pop out, we just take the helmet off and we're in some other room in some high school dorm, and we've just been playing a game for 5 minutes. I believe that that's highly probable as well.
Sure.
And that's the cool stuff, because, you know, when we want to say things like God did this and God did that, it's probably true. And the interesting thing about that is God's different if you're a Muslim. God's different if you're an atheist. Right? So it's subjective, but a Muslim and a Christian are both bowing to a higher power.
Everybody on earth bows to a higher power. The question is, what is your higher power going to be? Is it going to be God the Father? Is it going to be money? Is it going to be, you know, a car? Is it going to be sex? Is it going to be the God of science? Like everyone, this is the thing. Every human being on earth worships something. Yeah. And your choice is to either worship God. This is what Christianity says. Your choice is to worship God or to worship literally anything else.
Yeah.
Those are your two choices. So Christianity says this is the true God who created heavens and earth, all the heavens and all the earth and us, and gave us a story to live out. And you can worship that God, or you can worship literally anything else. And that's idolatry. So that's what Christianity says.
And so my question to that is, when it comes down to tangible religions, what makes them right versus what the Muslims say?
Mm-hmm. Well, when you investigate, so what I love about everything that you're saying in this conversation, whether it be infinite greatness and infinite smallness, prison planet, soul contracts, etc., and you know, NPCs and all this stuff, is that Christianity actually has answers for all of these things. All of these different things that are true, that appear to be true aspects of reality, can be addressed in the Christian story. And so what makes a religion true? What makes a religion true isn't because I said so. That's just power, and that's crap, and no one likes that. What makes it a religion true is, does it accurately describe visible reality? And so if you can, we started out the conversation saying that, you know, I think I said once I started digging down into what it means to be a man, and I discovered that what I discovered about masculinity and femininity is only reflected in one world religion, and that's Christianity. Christianity accurately reflects reality of masculine and feminine. What else does it accurately reflect? That's what makes it true, is that it's an accurate representation of reality. And so all these different things, what I've been trying to articulate, like for example, the soul contract of suffering. Yes, suffering is real. Yes, we are improved by suffering, right? So is it that there was a soul contract signed with us where we asked to be abused in all these really terrible ways for our own improvement? Or is it that suffering is allowed to exist to make us improve, to bring us closer to God, right? To teach us what holiness is. So it's like it describes the true thing, but it gives a different attribution to it. Christianity does that for everything that we've been saying. And so what makes a religion true is that it accurately describes reality and gives the proper answer to it. And other religions like Buddhism, Hinduism, Islam, you know, indigenous religions, they describe, they see the same aspect of reality, but they give the wrong attribution to it. Christianity is true because it sees the attribution of reality, it sees the aspect of reality and gives the correct attribution to it that leads to holiness and happiness and fulfillment. Like that's what makes a religion true.
There are sects of people on this planet that have not had any contact with any quote unquote outside world.
Sure.
I remember there's an island off the coast of Madagascar where if anyone approaches it, they get killed.
Uncontacted tribes. Yeah, it's a thing.
Yeah. What happens to them?
Yeah. I mean,
And no
I
one
went
told
to-
them about Christianity. What happens to them?
Right. So I went to India in 2019, and I went to the Kumbh Mela Hindu Festival. 190 million Hindus over like several weeks. And the Guardian, the UK newspaper, the Guardian, said it's the largest gathering in human history. And so I've got videos of like people from just the most remote regions, like they're just making this pilgrimage to bathe in the Ganges River, and maybe a missionary has never made it out to them. I certainly wasn't preaching the gospel to them. I wasn't Christian at the time. What about these people? And so I think there's two answers for that. Is the Bible says all of the heavens and the earth testify to the glory of God. No matter where you look, you see God everywhere, right? And so like you can't say there's no God. Atheists say there's no God, but really like they're just blinding themselves to the absolute overwhelming reality that like, yeah, life didn't just happen by chance.
No,
right? Like
God, no.
right. Okay. So that's one. So then the second question is you acknowledge that God is real all around you just by looking around. Like open your eyes, you'll see it. So what about salvation and redemption? It is entirely possible that every single person in the moment of their death, that what we would perceive, say objectively as 1 second, for them is like a day, an entire day where Christ comes to them and says, look, here's the deal. Here's what's actually been going on. I know that you were born in this remote part of the world, but this is actually true. And I can lay all this stuff and this is what's true. Do you accept me or no? And then they have, oh, okay, yeah, I wish you had said so. In. So we don't actually know if that happens. So it's possible that redemption and salvation is available to all of us, even if someone has never been spoken to directly. Like God can do whatever God wants. And if he wants to intervene in the last possible second, you throw yourself off a building, God forbid, and you're at floor 1, boom, moment in time freezes subjectively to your perception. Jesus is like, hey buddy, how you doing?
He slides in right under you as you're about to
yeah,
hit
I mean,
the ground.
time freezes, you know what I mean? And Christ is like, look, here's what's going on.
Sandals start clip-clopping.
Yeah, exactly. Here's what's going on. If you apologize for all your sin and you accept me as your savior, however he says that, you can be with God for eternity. Or do you want to have your sin and then you can get the alternative? And I think in those moments, there are probably some people that are like, you know what, God, I hate you so much. No. And then, okay, enjoy that. And there are some people like, oh, I wish I had known. I wish I had believed. But I think everyone will probably get that chance, because if God loves us enough to come down as a human and suffer and die, I don't think he would stop short of giving everyone on earth a chance at redemption. That wouldn't make sense. Like I did it, but these people didn't hear about it. So like, whatever. I think that
if in that moment you tell God to go fuck himself, that's when you go hang out with the devil.
Yeah, exactly. In the outer darkness, and then you get to experience what reality, because we live surrounded and embraced by God's presence all the time, 100%, 24/7, 365 for our entire lives. Hell is you go to a place where there is no presence of God at all, something that we can't even imagine because we've never experienced it.
Why would God allow that? Damn him.
Because we chose him, because we chose it. We chose something other than God. God's like, look, you get 80 years in the last second of your life to choose me, and you don't have to. You get free will. Okay, I choose something else. Then have that. You can have the thing you want. 40 years, 10 years, doesn't matter.
Whatever. I know, arbitrarily.
Yeah.
So 80 years. And actually, before I get into this, there's a theory that last second that you're talking about before God shows up, where your life flashed before your eyes, there's a theory that we're living it right now.
Yeah, cool.
That we're in that last second, that we're in that life flashing before our eyes moment right now. There's a theory.
Then this conversation meant a lot to me if this is part of my life flashing before my eyes.
All of it. Your entire life is your life flashing before your eyes.
Okay.
That's what they're saying. That's what this moment is.
Sure.
And this moment being the 80 years. Now, another fun thing is you just said, but it has been said that you get your 80 years and then you make a choice. So 80 years.
No, you're making the choice every day of your life,
and
whether you want God or something else.
Understood. But if you say no to God, that's 80 years that you've existed, and then an eternal damnation for the rest of your life for making the wrong choice.
No, it's not making one wrong choice. That's the thing. It's not like you get 80 years and you get the quiz. Do you want God or not? It's that every day and every minute of our lives, we're making the choice. Do we want God first primarily, or do we want something else? And at the end, and the combined weight of all those decisions over the course of our lifespan, however long it is, leads to us deciding at the end of our lives, ultimately what we finally want. And we can choose God. We can choose God with every choice one way or another, right? And we can choose to move in the direction of God so that in the final analysis, like, oh yeah, that's of course what I want. And then when we die, it's like, oh no, you don't want God. You want something other than God. You want your idols. You can have that. You've asked for it for 80 years and now I'm going to let you have it because that's what you want because I gave you free will as a gift. It's from God's perspective.
Yeah. It doesn't make any sense that if you die and you come face to face with God, that you're not going to be like, I choose you.
Some people
Clearly,
would not.
up.
That's the thing. Some people wouldn't. There are people who would choose, like, for example, Marina Abramovic. Like, Maria Abramovic has decided, clearly you know who she is, right? Yeah. Okay, has decided all her life that she wants the exact opposite of God, that she actively wants to create evil and darkness and suffering. And she talks about it, spirit cooking, that whole thing. She's decided she wants something else. She made that choice. So at the end of her life, she's going to be like, bye, I'm out. I'm going with the other guy. It's like some people are like that. And that's evil. It's people that enjoy creating suffering for their own ends. They've chosen something other than God. Now, there's a very small percentage of people, but they're allowed to exist. They're allowed to exist.
But they're all in Hollywood and they're all telling you stories.
It's amazing how that works, right?
And they're all in politics and they're all in power and they're all in government and it's them against us.
They're in all the institutions. Yes. It's light against darkness. It's the evil that wants to extinguish, that hates God and wants to extinguish all evidence from God's light on earth because it hates God and is an open rebellion to God. That's Satan. Satan is open rebellion to God, and Satan cannot ultimately defeat God. So what did Satan do? He went and corrupted man. He was like, I'm going to get your favorite creation. I'm going to corrupt him, and you're going to watch me create suffering. God's like, okay, you can do that. It's only going to serve my glory in the end. That's.
And all of that to say, ladies and gentlemen, the whole thing was a build up to tell you not to pay your taxes. Taxes are obeying the devil.
Yeah, so we can talk about sovereignty theory and all that. We can dig into that.
So we can dig into that. I love the idea of the sovereign male, the sovereign person, the sovereign entity, and with regards to government, I mean the contracts now, the contracts that are in place, the verbal contracts, the written contracts, the
Maritime
contract.
That's what I was going for. That's top. Yeah.
And that stuff is phenomenal. And I've got the ability. I've been pulled over by the police numerous times, and I've told them to leave. Right. So simple things like, why have you impeded my Canadian right and ability to travel?
Mm-hmm.
Is not license and registration. No. Right. I'm not going to engage you, and I'm not going to agree with you with what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They say license and registration. You do not engage them.
Mm-hmm.
Why have you impeded my Canadian right and ability to travel?
What do they say?
I've said that to 3 cops. One of them gave me a hard time, and 2 of them just said, have a good day.
Whoa.
So that's maritime law. And that's a very simple statement. Why have you impeded my Canadian? Because the definition of driving is the transportation of people or goods for profit.
Okay.
Definition of traveling is moving around.
Oh.
Right. So I'm not driving.
This stuff is so heavy. This stuff is maritime law is like, whoa.
Yeah. And you can talk your way out of it. And you can, there's so many things in here that, we agreed to. Taxation, for example, show me a piece of paper where I agreed to pay you any of this fucking money. Right. Taxation, what people don't realize and what they don't understand is taxation is voluntary.
Yeah, it is. Agree. And we have ways of making you talk.
Oh, 100% they do, right?
Yeah.
But for the most part, they're just going to go after the small fish. If you put up a big stink, they're not really going to fight you, right? And if you aren't tied to, and if you again don't have any idols, like we have all this stuff, we're going to take it from you. I'm like, you're just going to steal my shit. Go ahead. We're going to take your freedom. Go ahead. Put me in jail. You can't really do that, right? But society is afraid of this. Society is totally afraid of.
Yeah, most people don't have the fight in them to stand up to that.
Yeah, so the government's
been bred out of us.
Just going to push you around.
Yeah,
it is bred out of us, right? And then the government's like, "Give us your guns." I'm like, "Fuck you," And but now you're a bad guy. So, when you talk about this stuff, like it's even in Hollywood, right? Everybody under the sun understands that Al Capone was the greatest gangster in the entire planet, and they think that there's a difference between gangsters and the FBI and this and the other thing. But FBI is just another organized crime.
Well,
any lettered agency,
One Nation, Whitney Webb, One Nation Under Blackmail, Trying Day Press, the connection between organized crime and exquisitely documented the connection between intelligence and organized crime. That's what those books are about.
It's because it's the same thing. It's all the same.
Yeah.
It's all the same thing. So the story goes, Al Capone, the untouchable Al Capone, he beat every single rap that was ever put in front of him, but then they got him on taxes.
On taxes. Exactly.
So now Joe Schmo comes into this and they're like, well, if they got Al Capone, they're going to get me. That's not true, right? You got to ask the right questions and you got to make the right demands and you got to say the right things and they will go away. You can't be afraid of them, right? And here's the thing too. If we all stopped playing the game, they'd have nobody to bill. You're in the States right now, right? Your sitting president is a treasonous son of a gun.
God knows what. Yeah.
And now all of the money laundering that's been going on over to Ukraine, right? What happens?
Bad.
What happens when Florida needs some of that money, right? This is where you realize that. This is where you realize that all money everywhere is a scam, is a sham.
Oh yeah.
So all of these people too on this planet and in this reality, they have this belief that if you follow the money, you'll find out the root cause.
I agree.
But that to me is an ultimate distraction because those who live here invented the money. They don't need it.
Yeah.
They need you.
Oh, I see what you mean.
They need you to want it. Taxation isn't about them taking money from you, right? Taxation is about you not having the money. They're not spending your tax dollars. They're just taking from you because the more they take from you, the more you have to work. The more you have to work, the less time you have to figure out who you are and what you're truly capable of. It is the ultimate distraction, and it's all bullshit. It is fundamentally all bullshit. The Queen's going to sit there and talk about poverty with a gold piano in the background. She wears a hat worth billions of dollars. Meanwhile, people are starving.
Same with the Vatican. Like, oh, Christ came to serve the poor. Look at us in our palaces of gold with our giant bank. Like, are you serious?
Which is exactly why you can't believe in Catholicism, because it's next to Satanism.
Yeah, it's
right? And
Mary, the whole thing.
And it's ridiculous. You want, if you want all the truths and all the lies, like the Vatican is sitting on just thrones of truth with regards to Tartarian, the societies that built the pyramids,
Vatican Library,
sort of stuff, everything, right? The Nephilim, fallen angels, all that sort of stuff. They all exist. And there's information about it absolutely everywhere. So there's truth about the conspiracies, right? The conspiracies. There's a movie released in 1998 called Conspiracy Theory. Mel Gibson is a cab driver and Julia Roberts is in it. Go find that movie somewhere online and just watch the first 10 minutes. It's just him sitting in the car, driving a cab, talking to people in the back. And he's just spewing off conspiracy after conspiracy after conspiracy for about 10 minutes, just to show you that he's a conspiracy theorist, crazy nut job driving through town. Right.
Yeah.
But that movie was done in 1998. And if you listen to that movie now, you listen to the first 10 minutes of that movie, every single one of those conspiracies came true.
Oh, wow.
So
okay.
They're telling you the truth in plain sight. People are like, oh, I'm not going to go back and look at that. I don't care. Like, it's not a thing. Right. But now we've got so much information absolutely everywhere that you can't not see it if you don't want to look. Right. So all of that stuff is everywhere. And all of it, with or without pain, leads to an understanding and an awareness. Not so much of where we are, because it's not giving you answers, but it's eliminating falsehoods. And that is a powerful fucking statement.
Yes. Yes. Thank you. Because what I often say when I talk to people about conspiracy topics is like, look, like 9/11 is a great example. Like, I don't actually know what happened on 9/11, maybe everything, but I know what didn't happen.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's like, I can't definitively say, what it is that went on, because I wasn't there. Right. I wasn't in the planning execution of it, but I can say that, like, if you just look at Building 7 and you look at the actual NIST, the model for why Building 7 came down into its own footprint sometime in the afternoon, the modeling, what the government organization that said about that is because one cross beam failed, the entire building came down. Now, I don't know much about buildings, but I'm pretty sure that's not how you're supposed to build them, that if one beam fails. But the thing is, and this is even in their own data, and there's like architects and engineers for truth that are like, when they examine the NIST model, NIST is supposed to be an I-beam, and the way that NIST modeled it was not with an I-beam. So when they developed the model that said it all came down because of it all came down because of one failed beam, they even picked the wrong beam. wrong kind of beam. So they like lied in their own model. And when confronted about it, the guy who ran NIST was like, he gave some sort of non-committal answer. And so it's like, I don't exactly know, but I know that's not what happened. Right.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened, but I know that's not what happened. So yes, I like what you said. It's very much about picking out falsehoods, but we can't actually say definitively what the truth is because we're not actually there. But it's like, that's a lie. I don't know what the truth is, but that's a lie. And the ability to say that, to make that distinction is very, very powerful.
And that to me is essentially what awakening is all about, eliminating the lies. And when you eliminate, see, I'm not here looking for answers. I'm not here looking for new answers. I'm here eliminating bullshit. And when
Yes, it's a lifelong pursuit.
When you fundamentally eliminate everything that doesn't make any fucking sense, you get to an answer. It's a
Yes.
process of elimination. And so in my life, I'm dwindling things down.
Yes.
And people want answers. I don't want answers anymore. I want to unload useless information.
Yes.
Building 7, it's like never forget the World Trade Centers, right? But always forget Building 7.
Yeah, exactly.
The World Trade Center too, like there are so many pictures of that throughout the course of time where if you look at it, those buildings, I would guess, were built with the design of collapse. So when they went up, the plan was already in place.
I mean, there's certainly enough like cartoons and movie footage and stuff like that shows the buildings coming down all through the late 90s, right? Like there's a video going around that about that, the 9/11 anniversary this past year. There was videos going around about all these different things, like The Simpsons, obviously, and things like that have hinted about the destruction of the World Trade Center. But yeah, it's possible, sure.
Do you remember the X-Files?
Yes, I didn't watch it, but I've seen a lot of it since then.
So there was, yeah, that was an interesting thing. It's interesting now.
Yeah.
There was a show spinoff called The Lone Gunman. And
Yeah.
The Lone
The
Gunman
three guys, yeah.
were the 3 dudes, yeah. So they had their own spinoff. And the pilot of the spinoff, so the very first episode for the spinoff,
I think I'm not going to like what you're going to say. No, I in a good way. Like,
was
okay,
the telling of 9/11.
Oh,
It was the foreshadowing of 9/11. It was the telling of how they did it. And that to me is fascinating because again, in sort of future times, you're like, these guys did this, they hijacked this, they flew then a remote, this, that, and the other thing. And I really like that. But in the future, which is now my past, the idea that there wasn't any planes at all. When you really truly look at that footage, you're like, there's no planes. There's no planes. This is all CGI. This is all make believe. And
I've looked at videos about that.
And the more you look at it, the more you see. You're like, shit. So the funny thing about how well this mystery is laid out for us is you've got clues, which is the lone gunman, right? Which the conspiracy theorists can say, look, this is exactly how they did it, and they aired this before it happened, right?
Mm-hmm.
But and that sticks to the true story. And then the other story is no, it was missiles. Right. So it's like there's the story, there's the fake story, there's another episode of an episode of South Park, which is phenomenal. South Park is just dropping craziness left, right, and center. And again, too, you're on the Facebook. You should follow the Babylon Bee. Those guys are dropping truths left, right, and center. I'm like, I don't know who lit a fire under their asses, but they went,
right.
They went from they're next level now. Some of the shit, like one of the things that made me laugh my ass off was Seinfeld, comedians in cars getting coffee.
Mm-hmm.
So they did a spoof on it called, it was Chelsea and Hillary. It was called Clintons in Cars Killing Witnesses. And I thought to myself, holy shit, how is the Babylon Bee getting away with this?
Wow.
But yeah, they've come a long way. They're hilarious. Like they're dropping truth bombs left, right, and center, but like hidden in conspiracy, and they're not getting censored. They're not getting fact checked by Facebook. But they're a good follow. Anyway, so the episode of South Park that I was talking about was the Hardly Boys, and they were spoofing the Hardy Boys, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But it started off with somebody had taken a shit in the stand-up urinal, so it was Huta Suzuki, right? And it led into the president's. They were in the president's office, and George Bush was dropping conspiracy theories, and it was all jokes. But there was so much truth that they were laying out there, talking about how some people get the official story and they're okay with it. Some people can't handle the official story, so we invent the official story and we invent the conspiracies. And they go into great detail about how they do all this stuff. And I was like, I love this, that they're just showing this out here. Yeah, so many people in this day and age are looking for an answer. They're like, I need to be smart enough to tell you what's going on. I sit here doing this podcast, episode 222. I have no idea what's going on. I have less knowledge than I've ever had in my entire life. I'm just filled with whimsy and wonder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with all that. Like you've mentioned a number of things that like the no planes, you know, for 9/11, flat Earth, hollow Earth, concave Earth. Like I've looked at these things, and it's like, okay, I hear the arguments that a lot of people are making. I haven't found those particularly convincing. But that said, I think the process of asking questions about everything is incredibly important. It's like to engage in that process bravely. And that's the point that I always make to men is that, look, you have to be willing to question everything. And yes, sometimes men are very afraid of the answers they're going to find both in their outer lives and within themselves, especially. And to undergo that process alone can be very terrifying, because if you discover that everything that you've believed about your relationship or your workplace or your nation or your culture or yourself or whatever is untrue, then you're alone. And so that's why, you know, we started out talking about masculinity. Men have been so isolated from each other socially, physically, culturally, and that makes them like where they're alone and able to be picked off, right? Whereas if we actually come together as men and have conversations like this, including in person as well, we find community, we find fellowship, and we find strength to be able to ask really, really hard questions. And if not get close to the truth, at least get closer to an understanding like that's a lie. And I love what you said about how there's the official story and then there's the official unofficial story. You know what I mean? Like, you know, the controlling both ends of the spectrum. Like, okay, the people who are in, you know, the more normie mainstream side, they'll buy this story, but then we're going to go deep into the underground and we're going to sow this other story, and just people fall off, you know, the road onto one of those two ditches. And in order to have the strength and the mental discernment to be like, I'm not just going to take what's handed to me from either side. I'm going to continue to be strong in my own discernment and ask, is that true? And not actually land in something until it really, really passes your discernment test. And I'm really glad you said that, because what happens to a lot of people who start questioning, say, mainstream consensus reality is that they fall off the ditch into all this wild stuff that's meant to be a trap, the trap on the other side for
100%,
them,
yeah.
and they lose calibration. And that's why people like Mel Gibson, you know, in that conspiracy theory movie, are able to ridicule the conspiracy mindset. You know, and to some extent, like Alex Jones serves this function as well, not about him per se, but it's like, we're going to take all these ideas that have a lot of truth in them and we're going to ridicule them. We're going to make them so silly that no person who maintains a 9-to-5 job and pays their bills on time would ever consider looking at that stuff, because obviously it makes you crazy, and that can't be good. So people need to keep their discernment on the other side of the road as well.
Alex Jones serves a second purpose as well.
Yeah, for sure.
So your discernment thing is 100% accurate, because you have to think too, is when you break out of the normie mentality, you have to go as far as you can to the other side.
And there's no guardrails.
Yeah. You have to hit that ditch and just keep going. And then you rein yourself in. You're like, let me take a beat here. This shit's getting fucking weird.
Yes.
Right. So you're like,
yes.
I can't. But at first you're lost. You're like, everything is so crazy. And then it's just like, I can't do it. So now, and then you rein yourself back and you come back to center. But you've lived all the way over here in the weird normie world. And then you fired yourself all the way over there in the weird conspiracy world. And then hopefully you've come back in the middle. Eventually you'll come back to the middle and be like, I now call bullshit on everything. And you question it. 100%. You question it.
You sell merchandise? If you sell merchandise, I call bullshit on everything is a great t-shirt idea for you.
Putting it on a hat, fuck.
Yeah.
So the Alex Jones. Alex Jones is in the news right now because he told Sandy Hook people to their face that their kids didn't die. So now, why I think that's entertaining, because now hear me out on this. Alex Jones is a lunatic, but Alex Jones was also repurposed. He was once Bill Hicks. And Bill Hicks was a comedian that had a character named Alex Jones, and people still didn't pick up on this shit. So Alex Jones is certainly on the same team as everybody else. what Alex Jones represents right now is two things. Sandy Hook was fucked up. Sandy Hook was, it reeked of psyop all over the place. Now, that's not to say that innocent people didn't get hurt.
Right. Both things can be equally true, right?
Just like the World Trade Center was total bullshit. Bin Laden didn't take it down with airplanes from a cave in Afghanistan. Bin Laden is Tim Osman from the CIA. So there's that. Now,
or if you want to say that he did, if you want to say that he did take it down, you have to explain why Building 7 came down as well, right? That wasn't hit by, right? You have to factor in the inconvenient details about the moment if you want to support your narrative, right?
Exactly. And what was in Building 7 and why did it come down and what happened to the Pentagon and where are the plane parts from the Pentagon and what happened to Pennsylvania? What's all this all about? There's so many more.
It disappeared into a field, bro. It just disappeared right into the ground.
Well, it was science because the plane was going so fast that the ground actually hit like a ground ripple and swallowed the whole plane right up. Holy fuck. That is the actual story. I'm like, you idiots. So the people in the plane all got swallowed by fucking ground hornets. Murder hornets.
Did they ever pull out the bodies from? Yeah, I know.
Nothing. They didn't even pull out a piece of wing from nothing. I know. And everyone's like, it's a disaster around here. So that's bullshit, right? Now, here's the thing. I can make fun of that because I'm not talking about any one specific person. But when you go up and say your children didn't die, right? That's stupid. Stupid, entertaining, like lunatic, entertaining, but stupid.
Yeah.
So had he said, here are the peculiar facts of Sandy Hook. Here are the people that were involved. Here is a video of one of the quote unquote fathers who lost a child, apparently, laughing and being jovial, then getting into character, then speaking. Here's a video of this. Here's a video of that. Here are the people that were named to this. Here are the things that took place before that. Here are the results of Sandy Hook. And sadly, here are probably the victims. Right? So that could have avoided this whole thing. But what he represents as well right now is any person who doesn't have a strong backbone in any way, shape, or form will now self-censor because they can't afford to pay $14 million in fines to anybody if they're not 100% accurate on what they say. So the people talking all over the place that are mini Alex Joneses are going to shut the fuck up. And he represents that and he means that. And that's his intention. They've used him for that purpose to get these people not to spark free thought in other people.
I believe that. That's entirely possible.
So that's where that's another one of my own personal theories. Because again, I call bullshit on everything, absolutely everything.
Well, I think it's a very fair statement to say that anyone, probably almost anyone, possibly everyone in the public eye, whether they know it or not, this is the true statement. Everyone in the public eye, whether they know it or not, is capable of being used as a chess piece on the board of manipulating public opinion.
1,000%, yes.
Right. Yeah. Now you can be a willing chess piece and you can be like, yes, I will go over there and do this thing because we have this agenda, right? And there's a lot of that going on. But even people who are not necessarily aware of what's going on, they can be used. And so I can see Alex Jones being used in that way for sure, because I've often said, okay, so you put on the news, right? You put on whatever, pick your favorite mainstream channel, and they report the quote unquote, the fact they used to. They report the facts of the day in this very calm and grounded kind of way where they relate what's going on. And so when you want to report what we might call as alternate facts, like facts that are excluded from the mainstream narrative, what if there was a news channel that did it in the same way? Like, oh, this amount of money was sent over to Ukraine. Today, the Hunter Biden laptop was determined to be real and there was proved to be a cover-up. But they say it in this very grounded, very professional way. We don't have that. Instead, we have Alex Jones, 1776, we're gonna go. And it's like it takes all of these important facts and it makes it into this client caricature. So everyone's like, look, I don't know what that guy's saying, but he's not a dude I'm gonna listen to. Yeah. Versus if you were to get something like actual professional newscasters and set up a news network, it's like, here's the facts in a clear and almost clinical way, like journalism used to be. But that doesn't exist. And
well,
so
look at President the Trump presidency. For 4 years, the media just shit on Trump.
Yeah,
like they're
still shitting on him.
It's like how do you not fucking show your hand? Like 4 years consecutively, you're destroying a man who's sitting in office, and then Biden shows up and crickets, silence. Biden is an absolute moron and crickets. Yeah. If could you imagine if Donald Trump Jr. was Hunter Biden?
I keep saying that. It's like if Donald Trump Jr. sneezes the wrong way, the world ends. Hunter Biden has a laptop full of him literally on camera smoking crack and meth and banging hookers and taking endless photos of his junk and doing all these objectively horrible things, objectively horrible, disgusting things. And when you tell it to people, it's like, well, he's not Joe. It's like, what? Like, are you? And here's the thing. I think so many people in America and around the world decided to look the other way on a totally suspicious election. They're like, you know what? We're going to look the other way, lie, cheat, and steal, do whatever you do. Just let us go back to sleep so that we can have like 2014 normal. Like, Joe, you know, you were with Obama. We liked what was going on with Obama because we could be asleep. So just go take us back to 2014 normal, and we're going to look the other way. Even to the point where there was a Time magazine, how the 2020 election was fortified, like how we did it, right? They called it fortified, like on the cover of Time magazine.
Yeah.
And so I think everyone made that deal with the devil. They're like, you know what? Just take it. No worries. We just want to go back to sleep. And so now when you show them anything that rattles them, like, wake up. Do you see this? They're incapable of seeing it. You show them like Hunter Biden, like, here's Hunter Biden smoking meth. Here's Hunter Biden with like a number of different prostitutes. And they're like, yeah, but it's not Joe. It's like, are you kidding me? Like, in what universe does the behavior of the son not reflect on the father? In what universe?
Also on that laptop, there's the text messages about big man Joe taking all the bribes and taking the money.
I know. And what is it? Ashley Biden's diary that was just validated as real. Like, it's just,
and nobody cares.
Nobody can. They can't. I don't know that they can. And you know, it's very difficult. It's very difficult because, you know, you brought up the subject of NPCs, and you know that is a topic that's discussed in the New Age in various ways around, like, you know, people who have higher soul potential and people who don't. Right? Yeah. People who have the ability to question reality and people who don't. And that is a thing. And there's an answer for that in Christianity as well, as it turns out. But it's an unavoidable fact of reality that it appears that some people have this splinter, like in the Matrix addresses it. Not everybody is ready to be unplugged. Not everyone goes looking for Morpheus. Right? That's the whole beginning of the movie, is some people feel called in that direction. What's going on with that?
There's another movie that really talks well on it. It's another Ryan Reynolds movie. He's done a lot of them.
Yeah, amazing.
Called The Nines, and it's about the creators. It's a good one. You'll enjoy it. The Nines, and it's about the creators. It's a confusing movie at first, but when you realize that he's creating, you know, it's pretty fascinating how there's a limited number of nines on the planet. And it also, there's another one that ties into string theory. So the string theory of your soul. In other words, you are a product of your father. Your son is a product of you. If you don't have a son, likely you're a creative 9 and you're on your way out of this reality. You've done your go around 9 times. And then you're free to leave. So these are all things that this is a penance. This is a course. This is a penalty. It's like, this is technically house arrest for something that we did somewhere else. This is the result of denouncing God. You know, when you say you go straight to hell for the rest of eternity, that's a theory. This is where we are. A theory is you and I denounced God a while ago, and he sent us back around. Well, do it again. Right?
Yeah, Christianity says something similar, but not exactly precisely the same. Is that this is there's a great series of books called the Space Trilogy, the Ransom Trilogy by C.S. Lewis, where he goes into a full Christian cosmology. It's an incredible series of science fiction books where he lays all this out. And of course, C.S. Lewis was a very famous atheist until he became a very famous Christian apologist. And the idea is that
C.S. Lewis that started the bet with L. Ron Hubbard about who could invent a religion for $1?
No. What I've heard is that maybe he might have made some bet with Tolkien, but I don't think he had interaction with L. Ron Hubbard.
I heard L. Ron. I'm pretty sure I could be misrepresenting this, but I thought I heard L. Ron Hubbard started Scientology because he and another science fiction writer had created a bet who could invent the best religion.
That may be true, but I don't think it's C.S. Lewis.
For $1. I'll have to look at it.
Yeah, because L. Ron Hubbard, I think, is American and C.S. Lewis was British. But anyway, but yeah, I don't think it was C.S. Lewis. But one way or another is that, you know, Earth, again, like the theory of greatness and the infinite greatness, infinite smallness is like where we actually are is pretty close to the bottom of the drain. Like Earth, because of its fallen state, is pretty close to where you don't want to be. So it has all these characteristics of being very broken, lots of suffering that we can't understand. Why is there so much suffering on earth? Why does it appear to be the defining characteristic? Is because we're so close to the bottom of reality, the bottom of which is hell. Right, that's the very bottom of everything. And so from this position, we can choose to go up towards God, or we can choose anything other than God, which takes us down towards hell. So we're close. We're caught in between these two worlds, essentially. I don't know about the whole reincarnation thing, but again, these are all aspects that Christianity speaks to, and that is apparent if you read the Space Trilogy, because it also talks about the moon. And what the moon represents in a cosmological sense, from a Christian cosmological sense, which most people never heard of. Most people go their whole lives looking up at the moon, being like, oh, look, the moon's really pretty. It's like, well, we don't actually know where the moon came from. It's not made from the same stuff as Earth is. It's a whole thing. Once you go looking into it, it's transient lunar phenomena, which has a Wikipedia entry, a strange light seen over the moon, and it's a thing.
We've talked about a million things, but we definitely got to wrap this up. Just time wise, I mean, we're going long here, but hopefully people will listen to the whole thing. Well, they will. This the good thing about a long episode is you can take it in bite size.
Yeah, exactly.
And neither one of us have an offensive voice. Imagine running a podcast with a shitty voice. Like, I don't think it'd work.
No, you'd have to learn to not have a shitty voice.
What's your take on the moon, bro? After everything's all said and done, religion, conspiracy, everything that you've taken in, what do you think the moon is?
Yeah. By the way, I need to give a shout out to my friend and brother Tim, who's the guy who's continues to clue me into a lot of these different discussion topics. And so he's at this point, he's been probably really loving this conversation. And so coming to the moon is like the central kind of thing. Perfect. So we talked about the prison planet. Tim. Shout out, Tim. So we talked about the prison planet, and what I think the moon is I think and I didn't come up with this idea. I think I read it in a book. Is that maybe the book is World Bridger by Juliet and Jiva Carter, perhaps, but the moon is the keystone that holds the energetic matrix of the prison planet together. That the human spirit is so powerful and is so deeply drawn to God and to righteousness that there is this undeniable call. And the prison planet is really strong, but without this keystone to hold it all together energetically, that's what the moon does. It's this keystone. And that actually shows up. And I was surprised to see that in the C.S. Lewis books that I told you about, because in the C.S. Lewis books, there's the sublunar realm that the moon describes the boundary that Satan has given dominion over. And so the moon is this boundary that can't be crossed. So I think the moon is ultimately, and it shifts the tides and it shifts the Earth's magnetic field and the whole thing. I think the moon serves that energetic function. What is the moon physically? I mean, I don't know. People, like, I guess scientists launched probes at the moon in the 40s and 50s, probably the 50s, and it rang like a bell. So perhaps it's hollow. People who have done things like astral projection have seen that there's like a stuff built on the other side of the moon. Who knows about any of that? But I think it's pretty unavoidable that the moon, it is absolutely objectively true that the moon has influence over the tides. So we can feel like the water is gravitationally attracted by the moon. Most of the human body is made of water, so we are actually gravitationally attracted by the moon. I think that it messes with the energetic matrix of reality, let's say. So it definitely does that on a purely materialistic physical basis. That's true, and I think it's unavoidable that it also messes with our energetic reality as well in ways that probably we don't understand. And if someone can explain to me where the moon came from, like what the moon is made of, stuff that's not the same as Earth is, like how did it get here? That's a question that no one really knows, and that's really uncomfortable. Like if the moon were made because some meteor impacted Earth and some piece of Earth had broken off and became the moon, sure, but that's not what happened. Why is the moon cold and dead and lifeless? And no one really answers these questions. And so that it has this impact on us, that's such an important thing that we never question. It's the unquestionable thing. It's like that's even more means that we should probably look into it and start asking these questions. Like even if the answer is like, oh yeah, no, here's the answer. It's like, well, does it account for all the realities of it? That's another question.
Yeah, the answers if they're not right, in my opinion.
Right.
And yeah, I don't know. Again, I have so many questions about that damn moon, but I love that it exists, and I love that I get to look at it every day. And and wonder, So, as far as what it is, I mean, I understand that it is, um, where it lies in its fascination is, it's the same size as the sun. It appears to be self-luminescent,
Mm,
and it appears to be sort of dipped in an ether. So it appears to be hiding behind an ether.
mm,
So we believe that the sun's or sort of the moon's cycle is um, like the shadow of the earth essentially in the sun and all that sort of shit. Like we think that that's a reality when you throw 10 seconds of thought at that and it doesn't make any sense. I look at it this way. Can you picture I'm holding a wok, like a Chinese cooking
mhm,
wok,
mhm.
right? So you know how it's concave.
Yeah.
So now I'm holding it towards you, right?
Hmm.
And now you're looking at the top of it as I lower it into the sink, but I'm scooping the water, the sink water, right? And
Hmm.
it's dyed black, so it's black sink water. So you're looking at you're looking at the sink as I'm dipping the wok in,
Hmm.
and that to me is the cycles of the moon. So that
Oh,
sounds
sure.
weird, right? But
I get it.
I can get the crescent. In other words, I can put a little bit of the wok in to get the crescent moon. I can stick half of it in to get the half moon.
Sure.
I can tilt it and pull it back, right? So it again comes back to the magic eye in the mall where you look at it and you see the thing. When you look at that moon with different information inside your head, you see a different thing. I think the moon, for the most part, and an interesting thing too is when you look at the moon, like when it's a thumbnail moon, and you really look at it, and you look at the shadows on some of the culverts with a super zoom, it almost looks like it's a circular tube heading inward.
Mm.
So when you look at it with as a walk, convex walk, or concave walk, sorry, you see it differently as it dipping in water, as in it's dipping in the ether where things aren't necessarily there. Because sometimes when you take a picture of the moon, it's see-through, right?
I've heard this.
And there are a million flags on this planet that represent the star being seen through the moon.
Oh yeah, like the Pakistani national flag, something like that.
Exactly. There's tons of them,
Hmm.
right? So this is the star being seen through the moon. So the moon becomes translucent. I mean, that's peculiar.
Mm.
Also, another fascinating fact too is that we all know that sunlight is hot, and when you stand in the shade, it cools down. Well, moonlight is cool. So technically, and you can't feel it with your skin, but you can feel it you can see it with a thermometer. When you have a thermometer in direct moonlight, and then you move it into the shade, it warms up.
Mm. I haven't seen that either.
Moonlight is cooler than sunlight.
Mm.
It's the reverse of sunlight.
Mm.
So there's a ton of fascinating things that you can, test and do at home with regards to what the moon might be. But whatever it is utterly fascinating.
I
We
think
could go on for
yeah.
we could go on for hours and hours and hours about all this sort of stuff. But man, 2 hours in, two hours and a bit in. Really
Awesome.
happy to have had you here. I doubt
Thank you so much,
the last time you're here.
I hope not.
Do you? You might have some room for me on your show.
Yes, absolutely.
Fantastic. Is there anything that you wanted to say, or is there anybody you wanted to shout out, or is there anywhere we can drop people back? I mean, are you taking new clients? Let us know.
Yeah.
Where are we dropping you to?
Yeah, I just want to say real quick, thank you for having me on. This has been an incredible conversation. I think it's really important for men to be able to take their different ideas, different thoughts, different perspective, information, worldviews, and compare and contrast and bash them into each other. I think this is like fundamentally one of the most masculine things that men can do. It's like, how do we bash these ideas into each other to find out what truth is?
Mm-hmm.
Because we have to figure out, or at least discover, what falsehoods are. And so I think it's really great. And I think it's really valuable, the dialogue and all the questions that you're asking, and that you give me the chance to surface some of the questions that I've asked. And clearly we have a lot more to talk about in terms of because we've talked about, our like the soul contract versus Christianity, that worldview. Then there's always the globe reality versus the flat reality. There's that whole conversation to have as well.
Oh, yeah.
And I really treasure these discussions, because the question, what is the moon? Like, well, you're going to answer that question differently whether you see a flat reality versus a globe reality, like whatever, right? And I think these conversations are like almost forbidden, but like we need to have them. Because this is how truth is. This is how falsehoods are discerned and truth is slowly arrived at. So I'm very grateful that you've had me on to have this conversation.
Well, even on that note, if you think about when we were kids, what were the 3 topics that were impolite dinner topics? religion,
Politics, religion, and sex.
politics, religion, and finance, but sex.
Okay.
Well, I'm talking about sex, I guess. 4, but it was politics, religion, and finance. How much money you make?
Yeah, that's true.
What God do you believe in, and who do you support politically? Don't talk about these things because it's impolite to talk about these things.
In America, it's not. That's not true other places, but in America, yes.
And if we talk about them, we'll see through them, right? We'll see through the bullshit. All the things that they tell us not to talk about are the things that we need to talk about. 100%.
That's right. And conversations like this model it for men. It's like, look, we can have deep disagreements about reality and not be screaming at each other. It's like, and we could lay it out on the table and be like, here's what I think, here's what you think, and let's look at all this. And I think men need to have more of these conversations, and maybe not around the dinner table with friends, but like, in the shed, in the garage, on the hunt, at the gym. I think these conversations are incredibly valuable. So I just want to say thank you for that.
Yeah, for sure. I enjoyed it myself.
Where can we drive men to? So you can send men to listen to my podcast or learn more about my coaching by going to Linktree/Ren of Men. So from there, you'll be able to find the Renaissance of Men podcast. And I have my own. It's not unusual that I have long conversations. I just had a 5-hour podcast with a friend last night, and yeah, exactly. And my coaching is there, and some of the other things as well. So
amazing.
Linktree/Ren of Men.
We've said men a lot, but I want to say too that women can absolutely benefit from all of this. Like it's not it's not a exclusive, inclusive, or anything like that. Like, this is a lot of the time too. Men and humankind could be interchanged as a statement. So
yes, in my case, I mean men specifically, like a Renaissance of men. But the thing is that strong, noble, upright, virtuous men create the best possible environment for women to be women. 100%. That it's only in that environment. So it's not to say that, because there is a renaissance of women happening too. And I often talk in some of my other platforms about what I call the great reconciliation, is that when you have the renaissance of men and the renaissance of women coming together, you have the great reconciliation, which I think is what our world really needs. And the ultimate primary division that we experience is between men and women right now. And when we heal that, we have the great reconciliation, and then beautiful things come out of that.
You have an amazing post pinned on your Instagram, and I'll send people there too. I'll definitely put the link up. I'm assuming it's in your link tree as well. You have the post that's pinned there is that who she is not.
Oh yeah.
And I read that briefly, and I just thought this is so phenomenal, because we have this idea in our mind of who we're supposed to be and who we're supposed to pair with, and women have this idea of who they need to be. And again, we talked about it earlier. If women just woke up tomorrow morning and loved themselves as they were, so many companies would be out of business, and they would be so much more beautiful, without worrying about painting them faces and all this sort of stuff. Like, society's done a number on all of us.
That's right.
And one thing that comes up is toxic masculinity is like the biggest thing right now. And the truth is, the absence of masculinity is what is toxic.
Absolutely. True
masculinity is the safest place in the world for anybody.
Absolutely.
And what a great place to leave the show off on.
Yeah. Thank you. That who she isn't post is entirely about discerning falsehood. So you mentioned that. It's like, how do we discern what falsehood is? That's what that post is. Like, I'm not going to say who she is, but here's who she isn't. So we can cut away the falsehoods about women.
Yeah, I loved it. I loved it entirely.
Thank you, man.
And yeah, ladies and gentlemen, check that out. Check him out. The links will be in the description. Again, man, thanks for having you. Or thanks for being here, I should say. And ladies and gentlemen, in the infamous words of Red Green, keep your stick on the ice.
Thank you for listening to today's Mental Mastery Alliance podcast. Let the team know you're listening by using the hashtag MMA and Mental Mastery Alliance. Want more motivation? Be sure to follow online on Instagram at Mental Mastery Alliance and on Facebook at Mental Mastery Alliance. And remember, your perception creates your reality. Make it a great day.
You got it, Pontiac.